You're watching Cable 2.
Welcome to the Winston-Salem Forsyth County School Board of Education meeting. This is our work session and committee meeting. Today is Tuesday, September 9th, 2020. I'm Angela Harrison, superintendent, and now for Chair Shay Woodbury.
Thank you, Dr. Patterson, and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our September 8th virtual work session. I would like for Dr. Harrison now to go ahead and establish a quorum since I've called the meeting to order.
Yes, ma'am. Shay Woodbury.
Present.
Lyda Calvert-Hayes.
Present.
Andrea Bramer. Barbara Burke.
Present.
Leah Crowley.
Present.
Dana Jones.
Present.
Deanna Kaplan.
Present.
Elizabeth Motzinger.
Present.
And Marilyn Parker.
Present.
Thank you, ma'am.
Next, we need to get a motion to approve the agenda for tonight.
So moved. Board Member Crowley.
Second, Calvert-Hayes.
If there are no further questions or discussion, Dr. Harrison, could you please take the roll?
Yes, ma'am. Chair Woodbury.
Yes.
Lyda Calvert-Hayes.
Yes.
Andrea Bramer. Barbara Burke.
Yes.
Leah Crowley.
Yes.
Dana Jones.
Yes.
Deanna Kaplan.
Yes.
Elizabeth Motzinger.
Yes.
Marilyn Parker.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Harrison. Now I will turn the meeting over to Board Member Barbara Burke, who is the chair of the Curriculum Committee.
Thank you, Chair Woodbury. Good evening, everyone. The first item for discussion for our Curriculum Committee meeting will come from our Chief Academic Officer, Nicolette Grant. Ms. Grant will provide a presentation for our summer professional development. Ms. Grant.
Good evening. Thank you. Thank you, Board Member Burke. Thank you, Board Chair and committee members, Dr. Harrison. I wanted to provide just a brief overview of the professional development that we offered to our teachers this summer. So I'll pull up the presentation. So this summer, as you know, we were adjusting to the changes of our educational system with moving to remote learning, as well as trying to provide support for our teachers for the new curriculum adoption and textbook resources. So over the summer, we offered a series of required sessions for our pre-K teachers, our elementary teachers for Wonders, our new literacy curriculum. Middle school teachers received required training for the new Envision mathematics curriculum. High school, there were several new required trainings for the new textbook resources that we had for high school, for ELA, for multicultural curriculum, as well as for math. And then in addition to our curriculum and textbook training, we provided training to all educators in the district. We offered an open invite for a 2-day summer of learning self-paced module for teachers, specifically designed to help them to understand Canvas, to understand how to teach using digital resources, and how to engage students in remote learning. All right, for some reason we're not fast forwarding here. All right, so wanted to share with you the amount that we invested in our teachers to support their learning and the learning for students. So out of Title II, we spent about $548,000. For Title IV, $810,000, for a total of about $1.3 million that were invested directly in our teachers and that money will be going to teachers in their September paycheck. So based on the sessions that they attended, they will be receiving a stipend that will appear in their September paychecks. And I just want to thank our entire team. We had over 100 sessions and more than 7,000 lines of code and data that we had to decipher, go through, and organize so that we made sure each teacher will be able to receive the funding for the professional development that they attended this summer. We also had several optional sessions for science, for social studies, multicultural curriculum as well, SIOP, and some more resources and curriculum for our arts, to help our arts, our band, chorus, orchestra, music, theater arts prepare for coming back in a virtual environment. And so some of our next steps that we're looking at for professional development, we are designing a 3-day onboarding for any new hires that come to the district to provide them with an overview of our district's framework for teaching and learning, our curriculum resources, our remote learning strategies and tips. We are also going to be providing a 5-day remote learning professional development for teacher assistants, and that is thanks to the peer project grant that we were just awarded. And so we'll be sharing the details of that with principals soon. And then for all levels in the district, we'll be providing some professional development regarding technology resources, effective remote learning strategies. As we learn and as we adapt to our new remote learning environment, we'll be getting some ideas and tips from teachers as well. And then we will continue to support teachers with their content standards, instructional resources, and then providing monthly trainings for our instructional facilitators, AP, MTSS interventionists, multi-classroom leaders, and instructional technologists. And then as we receive our data from our benchmark assessments or our iReady assessments, we'll be helping our school leaders to learn how to analyze the data and make instructional decisions. So I just wanted to give you an overview of the investment that we made in our teachers this summer. Again, we had over 100 sessions that were offered. We know that we're not done. We know that our teachers still need a lot more support as we move into this remote learning year, but they did a fantastic job of growing themselves as educators. And I also want to compliment my team for leading all of these sessions, designing and leading all of the sessions, as well as supporting teachers through office hours and coaching. So at this time, I will stop sharing and see if there are any questions.
Board members, are there any questions, any comments?
This is Lyda Calvert Hayes. I do have one question. Could you tell us how many new hires we have that have taken this course?
I will need to pull that number up. I don't have that prepared right now, but every new hire that started in our district this summer did go through that. Marty Creech did a fantastic job. He stepped in to do our new teacher orientation. So I'll get the exact count and I will share that with you.
Thank you.
This is Elizabeth.
Sorry.
I just wanted to thank you and your staff and our teachers who have stepped up so remarkably under conditions that nobody could have predicted a year ago. It is phenomenal what people are doing and stepping up to do. And I know that many teachers feel overwhelmed a great deal of the time because it's overwhelming, but extraordinary work has been done. And I just am so grateful we have you here.
Thank you, and it's been a team effort, and I think my team's exhausted as well, but we're doing the right work for the right reasons, and we're here to make sure that our teachers and students and families feel supported during this time.
Thank you so much.
Any other questions or comments?
Yes, ma'am, Ms. Burke. This is Board Member Parker. Was the training on the new adoptions for the math and the reading, if I remember correctly, we had folks from that company to come in and do some of that. Is that correct? And did we as well have to do additional onto that, or did they do all of that training for our folks?
So we had the companies that provided training for us, and then our team also worked, in addition to the training that I shared in the PowerPoint, we also did RC Day trainings for support for teachers. But the companies also provided training support for principals. We did sessions for principals and then sessions for teachers as well with support of the companies.
Great, thank you.
Anyone else?
This is Board Member Kaplan. It just looks great, what you all have done. And I just saw where it had stipends. How much were the teachers receiving for attending?
So originally we had communicated $75 a day, and then once we saw that there was a revised AR that included an increase of $18 an hour, the stipends that the teachers will receive will be that new rate of $18 an hour. So it depends on how many hours the teachers attended. So we've combined all of the required sessions that they attended. Some of the same teachers might have gone to Wonders and Summer of Learning. We've combined all of that, and they will be receiving $18 an hour for the trainings that they attended.
Great, thank you.
Okay. I would like to say thank you, Ms. Grant, to you and to your team for the professional development that you've provided for our teachers. I also want to say thank you for the next steps, the ongoing professional development. Thank you. And I also want to say I know our teachers will be happy when they see that September check. So it's all going to pay off for them.
Yes, thank you. And thank you to Finance, who's now going through all of those numbers line by line to make sure their teachers get the right amount. So thank you to Finance as well.
Absolutely. So if there are no further questions for Ms. Grant, we'll move on down the agenda. Thank you so much. Next on the agenda, we will hear from Dr. Kelly Hills, our Executive Director of Federal Programs, for a Title I budget overview. Dr. Hills.
Good evening, board members, Dr. Harrison. As the agenda states, I am coming to you tonight to share with you just an overview of the Title I budget for the 2021 application to DPI. I will share my screen with everybody. So each year, the federal programs applications are prepared. Although for Title I, there are some requirements, an LEA or a school district can use Title I funds to support activities as long as they're supported by data that are specific to the school district. These set-asides or reservations are done prior to calculating a school's allocation. Some of the optional activities include district administration, school improvement interventions for select schools, pre-K program, and transportation for foster care. For the 2021 school year, this chart provides an overview of the list of Title I reservations. The optional ones are noted with an asterisk. Our planning allocation from DPI is right at about $20.3 million. As required by law, we do reserve a portion of the allocation for private schools participating in equitable services. And so we have about 20.126 available for public school use. As you can see, the categories where we do reserve funds. The changes we have for this current school year is for the school improvement interventions for select schools. We are able to use Title I funds to support the needs of our CSI and TSI schools. These are schools based on their student outcome data that have been identified by federal designations through the law. And so it was decided to provide support to these schools to help address the student subgroups which may have contributed to their designation. Some of these include school improvement directors. There's also a director of data collection specialists. As you can tell, very much supporting schools with their review of data so that they are making strategic instructional decisions. We also use our set-asides as required for parent engagement. That full amount is allocated to each of the Title I schools. We also reserve funds for our homeless program in addition to McKinney-Vento funding. We're able to provide some funding for foster care transportation to help defray some of the additional costs. And we also support our pre-kindergarten program and also our neglected and delinquent. Crossnor is our institution within the county, and they receive the Title I funds through the LEA. For the 2021 school year, we have 23 schools designated as Title I. We provided a list in your board materials. We have one new school for this year, and that is Lawrence Middle School. That's a total of 27 elementary schools, 9 middle, and 7 high schools. Each Title I school develops a plan for their school-wide program. And a school-wide program allows the Title I school to use their funds to support students that are having challenges meeting state academic standards or assessments, and also to supplement and raise the quality of the entire school's instructional program. This chart shares with you how much funding is allocated to the schools. As you saw on the previous slide, 20.126 is for public school use. We had about 9.2 million reserved from our set-asides. And of our 2021 funding, almost $11 million to the schools. We did have funding that was unspent from last school year called carryover. And so $4 million is allocated to the schools for the 2021 school year. Each school does develop a plan. They use the funds to supplement in areas such as instructional staff, including teachers or TAs, also for instructional facilitators or instructional coaches, also for parent-family engagement coordinators, also use their funds to increase the media collection so that it is newer and also more representative of our students, also for supplemental supplies and materials, which may be math manipulatives, could be leveled readers. And also funds are used for software, again, as materials to support instruction. So that concludes the overview of the Title I allocation for the 2021 school year.
And Ms. Berg, Ms. Board Member Kaplan and Board Member Crawley both have questions.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. So I just have a quick question about the 4 million of the unspent, or the roughly 4 million of the 19 to 20 carryover funds. Was this 4 million due to the closure of the schools in March? And if so, well, if it was or not, but also, do we lose this if we don't spend it? And how many years can we do a carryover?
Wonderful questions, thank you. I'll answer your last one first. Title I funding is available for 27 months. So we are not reverting any of the Title I funding to the state and in turn to the U.S. Department of Education. We do have a higher amount of carryover this year for the reason you stated, because we did shift to remote learning. Some of the schools were unable to implement some of the strategies that they had budgeted for the 19-20 school year. Some of the funds were also available that we kept available if needs occurred during the school year. And obviously, because we moved to remote learning, different needs presented. So that is why there is that little over 4 million that's been designated carryover to the schools.
Okay.
And that was reallocated back to the schools, Ms. Kaplan.
Oh, okay. Okay, great. Thank you.
I think Board Member Crowley had a question.
Yes, I'm really concerned about Title I students who aren't in Title I designated schools. And we have many schools that have high populations, though it's not over 50% to get that Title I designation. But I want to know, what are we doing to make sure that these students are receiving services, or that teachers are getting support to help Title I type students with the issues that go with being in that categorization?
Certainly. So students who are identified low income and they are not in a designated Title I school, one way in which they may be getting support is through Title I funding for positions such as an MTSS coordinator. If a school is a TSI school, meaning that they have a subgroup or subgroups that are performing below, or there is a gap between subgroups, there is a position allocated to TSI schools that are providing direct intervention to identified students. They may be low-income students, or they may be students in a different grouping. These coordinators also work with teachers, providing them support in terms of what our instructional strategies are used during core instruction before they move into intervention. And then also within each school, the low-income data is actually confidential. So it's an interesting dynamic where the federal government says it is a required subgroup in which we identify students, but in North Carolina, you do not know which students have been identified low income. So therefore, it becomes a challenge for non-Title I schools to be specific to low-income students. Low-income students are also in different subgroups based on the federal designations. And so I'm sure others would be able to speak to this as well. But I would say each school, a non-Title I school within their school improvement plan, they're reviewing their data to determine which students are not meeting standards and not meeting the assessments, and using their resources to support students and also the teachers. So when we have APIs, assistant principals of instruction, or in schools with instructional facilitators, that is the role that they are able to provide support for teachers.
Okay, and are we still going by the 50%?
For the current school year, the threshold or that cutoff is 55%, and that kept us at the same number of schools with the addition of Lawrence.
Okay. Do you know about how many schools are at, say, 45% or higher? I'm just curious, how many do we have that are really close?
I do have that number. I jotted it down before we started. We have 13 schools that are between 40% and 55%.
40 to 55%. Okay, another 13.
13 schools, yes.
Okay. And do we know how many students?
I would have to get back to you on that.
That's my concern. Is you could have, you could have a high school like this, like say like a Glenn High School that's a big school, and if it's at 45% for free and reduced lunch, that total number of students could be higher than any of these other schools that are at 55% or higher. I just want to make sure we're serving students and not just a designation for a school.
Absolutely. I'll provide those numbers for you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any further questions?
Oh, just the context. What percent in our district is free and reduced lunch students district-wide?
So our low income percent is about 54%, but I will confirm that in the data that I share when I provide the number of students that fall between the 40 and the 55%.
Thank you.
Certainly.
Any additional questions or comments from any other board members? Okay. Well, Dr. Hales, thank you so much for the Title I budget overview. This concludes the curriculum committee meeting, and now I will turn things over to board member Motzinger for the policy committee to begin. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, board members. I believe the first matter that's on the policy agenda is a review of the Equity Advisory Bylaws by Effie McMillan. Effie, are you on the call this evening?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes. Hey, Effie.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. We're ready and eager to hear from you.
Awesome. And so I know, do I need to share my screen? I'm sorry.
Yes, please.
Okay. Can you see the draft?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
we can see it.
Okay,
Yes.
perfect. I couldn't see it on my end, so I apologize for that. Let me just move it over. So I apologize, a little out of sorts this week. The equity policy 1100 that was adopted January 2020 includes the formation of an advisory council that will consist of internal and external stakeholders. Therefore, tonight I'm bringing forth to you proposed bylaws for the Equity Advisory Council that would govern its function. The bylaws, as you can see, include the goals and purpose of the advisory, a process for selecting members and their responsibilities as a member of the advisory, term limits, meeting attendance, etc. So tonight, I'm just bringing this forth for your review to answer any questions and to move forward with adopting these bylaws so that we can establish our Equity Advisory Council.
And Ms. Montsinger, I wanted to let you know that this would, pending approval, this would be published out there until our, full board meeting for comment, unless our attorney tells us different. For any kind of comment.
Absolutely. I think Board Member Kaplan had raised her hand.
Okay.
Did you have a question? Board Member Kaplan?
Ms. Kaplan?
Yes, I've got it. I'm sorry, I was on mute. Thank you. So I was reading over the Equity Advisory Council bylaws that are being proposed, as well as the next ones for the Facilities Advisory Council. I know we're talking about the equity right now, but I had noticed that in the presentation for facilities, they were saying they were aligning the facilities with the Equity Advisory Council. And so my question is, in the Facilities Advisory, I noticed that the chair is the Building and Grounds chair of that council, and there is an additional board member. So in the Equity Advisory Council, would it not be prudent to include board members on that?
Absolutely, at the chair or whomever the board or superintendent submits as their designee.
Okay, just sound like that might be a good idea.
Okay. So just to clarify, you're suggesting the wording to change to align it with the facility bylaws so it can actually state board member?
Right. Well,
Okay.
I think that that somewhere I was reading that facilities was sort of aligning with what Equity Advisory Council was doing, and just seeing that facilities did include board members, but this one did not.
So the Equity Advisory, just to be clear, it really is for the purpose of guiding the day-to-day work of the district. The if you'll go back to the purpose of the other, I forgot the name. What do we call it? The group. They actually are a group of citizens who are really looking at facilities and looking at bond work, and they're not really going to be making decisions and driving day-to-day operations. So they will not be involved in the work of Darrell Walker and Lauren in that group. They will be giving us, just to make sure they're aware of what goes into building a school when bond work comes around, working with the community on understanding construction of facilities and passing bond work, which is more at the board level and community level. The Equity Committee will be a citizens committee, will involve, our community, but at the same time, will guide the day-to-day work of the superintendent and, of course, of the general public. So they serve two different purposes. I don't really know how you'd like to insert those or vary those. And maybe Dion can help us with that, but there are two different levels of work. Mm-hmm. They will not be engaged in the same work. For example, the facilities group will not meet with staff or direct the work of staff. But the equity committee more than likely will give a lot of advice to staff and the work that's involved there.
This is Elizabeth, and one of the things I think is important to be clear about is advisory committees or councils are advisory. They're not charged with making decisions. They don't have votes that the district must abide by. And I understand there are lots of different feelings people have about that, but I think it's very important to be clear that it's advisory. They're advisory roles, and that's what we want are people who really are connected to the community writ large and have important insight to share, but they are not going to be empowered to decide they don't get to decide what the district does. They get to advise the district, and I think that's important to be clear about.
Right, and I completely understand that. I was just suggesting that to add a board member to the Equity Advisory Council for communication, just an extra level of transparency.
Well, and would you feel that that was answered if anyone who wishes to serve in that capacity contacts the chair of the board and or the superintendent to suggest themselves?
Sure. Yeah.
And as in all of the advisory committees, my understanding is board members are always welcome to attend those kinds of meetings if they wish to.
Okay.
This is Dion. Yes, that's correct. These would be public meetings, so anyone would be allowed to attend.
This is Board Member Jones. I'm not on the policy committee, but I'm a little confused. Ms. Monsinger, I hear what you're saying, that advisory councils are just that, advisory. But what I was hearing the superintendent, I think, say, so maybe we should get some clarification, is that the Equity Advisory Council was going to be meeting with staff and was going to be giving more daily insertion of direction versus the Facilities Committee. So I think if that's the case, I agree with Ms. Kaplan that I think, that's kind of the whole role why we were elected on the Board of Education for the county. And so not having a designated representative on one that seems to be giving more direction than advisory is what I heard. I think, I'd like to see a board member, at least a slot on there if we're going to have it on the other one.
Yeah. Would you clarify that, Dr. Harrison?
And I don't think
understanding?
Go back to membership. If you'll scroll to membership, I don't think I said meeting. I think I said will be, I think what I said was they'll be interacting and having more of an influence or impact on day-to-day work. I don't envision this advisory council having direct, but they will influence the work because it does say collaboration. It says include representation of families, community members, higher education, students and teachers, and district administrators. And so a part of this committee is listening to folks. We had a community meeting today and some things were said. And as we listen to that feedback, we want to go back, and while a lot of the information was not accurate, we will go back and make some adjustments in the way we communicate and share. Include balanced representation of student, parent, family demographics. Include members who bring connection and advocacy for local history, historically underserved communities. Include members who have experienced across multiple dimensions of diversity. Include members who are relevant, who have relevant experience. Include no more than 15 people and not fewer than 9 members. And include members who live within the geographic area. So this advisor group, any one of you could fit in this particular group. But what I find with advisory groups is that it's really good to have situations where they can be honest and transparent without a lot of influence or threat of negative backlashes. So we're going to use this information to drive a lot of day-to-day work. The difference between this committee and the Committee on Facilities is this committee will not be out sharing with the community and advocating for bond work when that should come about. The other is more of an informational type of group. We want to share information, teach you about facilities. Listen, that's more giving the whole board advice about your work. That's more at the board level because you selected people to represent you and your communities. This particular board advisory committee has more to do with day-to-day operations. And of course, it probably does have something to do with policy as things bubble up. But it doesn't exclude any board member from participating based on the membership, is I guess is the point.
Can I request a scroll up on the responsibility of members so it's clear what the responsibility is? Right, so again, I think the point is really to really be well informed, to work well with other members of the committee, to participate, and to really that fostering respect, trust, and openness within the committee. But again, what I think is important is that as an advisory committee, they can't direct staff to do certain things. They can't direct curriculum to be this way. They can give real feedback about how it's being taken into the community and being used or not used. Unless I misunderstand something.
And you are correct.
So can I just again suggest that any member of the board who would like to be an official member of this committee, please submit their name to the chair, Chair Woodbury, and Dr. Hairston, so that they know of your interest.
Okay. This is, of course, Board Member Woodbury. I would definitely suggest that Board Member Kaplan maybe continue to lead this group since she was the chair of the non-standing committee that I developed previously, which rise to a vote by that committee to bring to the main board to establish an advisory, as I can recall how we sort of ended up in this place. So that's one thing I would like for us to consider, just the role of Board Member Kaplan continuing to help lead this work. The second piece I wanted to highlight was there was concerns from the Equity Coalition with one of the members about maybe no conversation from the previous non-standing equity committee. When I say non-standing, meaning it's not one of our regular committees, just the one that I created. So Effie, could you talk to us about if there was any communication with any of the previous members around developing this bylaw?
No formal conversation. I did gather notes from when I was meeting in sessions with them before the policy was completed, and referred back to some of those notes in terms of what they were looking for, some of the thoughts behind what the advisory council should look like. And then there was collaboration with other departments, such as social studies and AIG, so that we could have some consistency with how advisory committees were established and operated within the district, so that there was not a lot of fluctuation between one versus another. And so there was some collaboration there to create the bylaws across different advisories for consistency.
Okay, very good. So what I would suggest then is that, the community understands that, our work committee sessions are no different than when we used to meet in our previous committees, and there was no input from people that attended our regular committee meetings. I know we kind of went to this new model, and we all are still, adjusting. And so there is some concern that the public has not had an opportunity to weigh in on the bylaws, whereas once it comes to the full board, ideally by, in 2 weeks, then they will have an opportunity to, of course, address any concerns regarding what's on our agenda. But what I will say, even up to that point, and I know Effie and Dion, you can clarify this, we will put it out through our website for community people to have input. And also, like I always tell the community, anytime I send out any public correspondence, my cell phone is connected to any of my email. Is very public. I think all of us as board members are very accessible. So, the community should not feel like they don't have a voice just because they're not involved in this part of our work, and to try to give us more points to consider as we move towards what the bylaws are. And lastly, I would just say, as an advisory group, once it's established and there is, consideration around adjusting the bylaws, then just bring it forward to the advisory council to adjust the bylaws. I don't think there's any need to think that, oh, these are the bylaws and they're set without any considerations, even after, we voted on this, and as members, those members having some concerns around adjusting the bylaws. So I just want everybody to, just stay patient with the process and be flexible so that we can adjust based on the needs of, students and staff in our community.
So if I may, Chair Woodbury, I just wanted to say we do not have a policy specific to the development of bylaws and the solicitation of feedback. However, what I would recommend is that we treat this like we would a new policy or policy revisions. And so if the committee is satisfied with at least this first draft, of course with some proposed revisions and suggestions, that we publish this for public comment for a minimum of 7 days, or longer if you feel longer is needed, in order to solicit feedback from the community. So I would just treat this like you would a new policy or a policy revision.
Okay. Thank you.
And Ms. Crawley had her hand up here.
Yes, this is Board Member Crowley. I just had a few grammatical changes for this policy. I sent them to Dion, but she wasn't the author of it. Who should I send those to?
You can send them to me. As I've been reading them, I've caught a couple too.
Okay.
It's one of those things where you read it multiple times and it all starts looking the same all the time. So yes, if
totally
you'll send those to me, that would be great, and I'll make those corrections.
Okay.
And what would be helpful, I think what would be helpful to Effie and the group, and you all can talk about this before next week, it would be helpful to know if you want this to be a BOE subcommittee or you want this to be an advisory. There's two different roles here. So just think about it, and that's going to drive a lot of what the wording as well. Okay?
Okay. Any other comments? So is everyone comfortable that we will have Dion post this? Who's on the policy committee?
And to clarify, in the action portion, that's what you would be.
Okay,
if the committee, no problem. If the committee is satisfied with it, at the action portion of it, you could take action to have me post it for public comment.
Thank you. So now we're on to Facilities Advisory Council. Dion?
Thank you. And please bear with me while I pull up the draft Facilities Advisory Bylaws. Is everyone able to see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. As was referenced earlier, I believe by Ms. Kaplan, the Facilities Advisory Council bylaws were drafted in a similar model as the equity bylaws and the previous Multicultural Advisory Council bylaws that were submitted by Rebecca McKnight, seems like ages ago. But they're modeled after those bylaws so that they are fairly consistent in form, but there are differences. And so I'll just briefly walk you through the proposed bylaws. I do want to emphasize that this is a draft. It is not on the agenda tonight for action because I anticipated, with this being the first time before the committee tonight, that there may be questions or feedback or changes. However, based on the conversation today, it sounds like if the committee is okay with it, what we can do is post it for public comment after the meeting tonight to solicit feedback from the community if you believe that that's warranted. But the goal of this advisory committee is to, for just like Dr. Harrison stated earlier, for the purposes of engaging the community, soliciting feedback about capital projects, other facilities needs, as well as ongoing bond and construction planning. I do anticipate that this council may work somewhat with the Equity Advisory Council, or at least that equity would be a factor, because that is one of the elements of your strategic plan as well, is equity in facilities and resources for facilities. So equity will definitely be a factor in the considerations and the topics that are discussed as a part of this advisory council. And so the purpose is there, as you see on the screen, to collaborate with the superintendent and various members of the board, as well as operations and finance, on ongoing facilities needs, to review the goals and priorities for renovation and/or construction of various capital projects, and to serve as a liaison to the public and to the community and essentially to advocate for bond projects in the future whenever those come up. And then, of course, any other related tasks that might be assigned by the board or by the superintendent. The selection of members is a little bit different in this and these proposed bylaws as in the equity advisory bylaws. And this is actually based on the previous presentation that I gave on the creation of this council. And again, of course, this is subject to change, but what I proposed is that the bylaw consists of representation from members of the community touching various areas of the community. I included a suggestion or recommendation, if possible, that there be at least one representative from each of the various middle school zones, and those are listed here. And I chose those just because those seem to be the most broad and expansive across the county. That it consists of members of the community who have a demonstrated interest and a vested interest in seeing the public school system succeed and in advocating for all students within the district. Preferably, members will have experience across multiple industries so that they can bring a diverse perspective to the group. And the group would consist of no more than 9 community members, each appointed by a member of the board, and you all have submitted your nominees to me, and that they live within the Winston-Salem Forsyth County geographical boundary. In a minute, I will pull up a calendar that's been created to show you the pinpoint of the addresses for the nominees that have been submitted so that you can see where they reside and the areas of the county that are represented. One thing that's also different as a part of this council that I'm proposing is that the chair and the secretary of this council are pre-established. I'm proposing that the chair of the council be the chair of the Buildings and Grounds Committee for obvious reasons, that one additional board member participate on the council, and we can set up a process, or you can set up a process for how that will be, that the superintendent be on the council, as well as other staff members from various district departments as needed. The responsibilities of the council members are, again, to become knowledgeable about current capital projects. There'll be a lot of information that is shared with them, and it's important that they become knowledgeable about these projects so that they can provide feedback and so that they can advocate for bond projects in the community. Foster a sense of respect, trust, and openness amongst the council, actively participate, and then, of course, publicly represent themselves as only a member of the council. Again, pursuant to the bylaws, as well as pursuant to North Carolina general statutes that talk about the development advisory councils, they do serve only in advisory capacity. They do not take action. They do not tie the hands of the board in any way. They provide advice to the board and feedback to help guide the board's decisions. As far as the terms of the members, again, this is based on the previous presentation that I gave when you approved the development of this council. I'm proposing, in order to have as diverse participation as possible, that each advisory council member serve a term of 1 academic year. This year will be a little bit different because we're already several weeks into the school year, but generally speaking, 1 school year, and then they're limited to 2 one-year terms. However, there may be circumstances where the board might want to extend a council member's participation on the council beyond those 2 years, and so I included a provision in here that will allow the board to do that if you choose to do so. I also included some language for how a vacancy on the council would be filled, and then similar to what is outlined in the equity advisory bylaws, there are some expectations with regard to meeting attendance. It is proposed that the meetings would be once per quarter with at least 3 meetings a year and not to exceed 2 hours in length. Of course, there may be situations where that may not be the case, but that is at least the recommendation. And then the next session outlines the duties of the chair and the secretary, which again are very similar to what's outlined in the Equity Council, with the exception of the chair and the secretary already having been designated in these bylaws. And then at the end, similar to what's in the equity advisory bylaws, there's a provision in here that would allow the bylaws to be amended from time to time as needed by the advisory council members. And so with that very brief overview, I'm happy to take any questions that you may have.
Hey, Dion, this is Board Member Jones. Can you pull up the graph that shows where the locations are? Because I think we're missing some. It looks like, our designees from each board member are pretty much concentrated. I have concerns that I think I brought up in the beginning of this is, we have big areas of the county that really aren't representative. There's no representative from that section.
Yes, ma'am. I have pulled it up. Are you able to see the map?
Mm-hmm. Yes, Dion. Okay. Thank you. I just have concerns that we have large groups, sections of our county. I would go back to, I think in the early stages, I brought up the idea of could we have each municipality assign a representative from that municipality, and then as well as the 9. It looks like in the bylaws for this committee, it just limits it to those 9. But I just have a concern that we don't have anything around the Bethania area. We don't have anything from really Louisville. There's one in Clemens. I think there's 2 over in Kernersville. I don't really see anything from like the King, Rural Hall, Tobacco area. So I think if we're going to do this, we would want to have the voices around the table. So that's just my only concern.
The one thing I did want to note as well about the map, after putting in the addresses, there was one nominee that actually, as you'll see down here at the bottom, resides right on the Forsyth County, Davidson County line. And so if you, happy to receive the feedback from the committee as well as the feedback from the community. But if residing within Forsyth County is essential, then I will need to go back to that particular board member and ask them to submit a different nomination.
I mean, I would think that you need to reside in Forsyth County.
Yeah, I think that's probably.
Yeah, I agree.
Yep.
This is Board Member Burke. I agree also.
Yeah, I side with Board Member Jones on this. I'm very concerned about the lack of representation in the north, the northeast, in the unincorporated areas, and even this kind of the center south. If you're looking at Walltown or any of those communities, going down south on 52, we have a lot of representation along Business 40. We're not missing anything there.
right?
So I believe, Ms. Jones, your suggestion was to maybe reach out to the leadership in the various municipalities and ask if they would like to submit someone for consideration. I would ask for clarification. Are you asking that those individuals be added in addition to the ones that have been submitted, or in lieu of?
I was speaking of in addition to. Now, other board members may feel different, but I feel like too, if a lot of this is working toward our next bond projects, we always want to make sure that we have the support of, our municipalities, our cities around the county as we move forward with that. And I think it would say a lot to have a representative. So if I'm on the town council in Louisville, they know their community, they know members of the community who would meet the criteria that we have outlined in these bylaws, and submit a name to us to serve. And then I think in addition to our names that we put out there. So that's just my thought. I think then that way we would be a little bit more intentional on making sure that we have representation from all of the areas.
Yeah, this is Board Member Parker. I feel kind of that way too. Although at the same time, I think we could possibly get it too large. I mean, we had no way of knowing. I think when you submit a name, where everybody was going to land. So I think maybe some discussion to see just who we have recommended, and then look at the areas we might need to go to see whether we need to maybe take a step back. We've got 5 people right here, in the same area basically. So it might be prudent for the board to kind of look at where we have and where we may need to go to, and then reach out to the municipalities and see, or we as board members may know folks in those municipalities to be able to recommend. So, maybe some discussion like, here's where we've ended up and here's what we need to do. And maybe we can go from there.
This is Elizabeth. One of the things I'm really hearing is we're talking about 1 or 2 year terms for an advisory committee. Ideally, it seems to me that this should not be focused on advocacy for my area, but ideally getting a fresh set of eyes as we're putting bonds together. But I think by the time we get so spread out and then try to help people understand what the things are at stake, it's time for them to leave. And, I think we're spending so much time trying to get this broad thing for an advisory committee to serve for 1 to 2 years. And yet when we're putting together a bond, it's a couple-year process. It would almost make more sense to me to say, if you're somebody who has some capacity and ability to learn how to look at this, we're looking for big picture, not I want a school in my community. It should be, this is what serves the district well, and I was hoping it would be more fresh eyes and not advocacy for my community.
Board Member Monsignor, I didn't mean it to just advocate for a project in their community, but a lot of times folks really know the needs of that community. I would know some of the obstacles that are happening, say over that people that live in Walltown are having, as much as someone who lives right there. And so that was my suggestion, not so much to advocate, hey, make it, but to just have that central conversation. And I bet if we look at some of the names that we have put out there, I don't know who the names are, but if there are also people who are, at all of our board meetings, who might already know a lot of the things that are going on. And so, fresh eyes, but these are people who have a vested interest in our community and want to make sure that we are equitable and do the right thing in the next bond package. That was just a suggestion. We definitely don't have to do that. And we could maybe just look at the areas that we're lacking some folks and add some more people to it, or roll on with it the way it is.
Yeah, I think it'd be helpful to see who has been suggested so far, because it may be, that may be more helpful than where do they live.
And if you would give me maybe about 30 seconds, I do have a list of all of the nominees. However, that also includes their address. And so therefore I do not want to broadcast their address for the public to see. So let me see if I can cut that information out, and I will pull up a list of the names that have been submitted.
Thank you.
And this is Board Member Crowley. I agree with Elizabeth on the part about having these people stay engaged a little longer. I originally thought this was more about, definitely about building the next bond request and having these people kind of see that process through. Part of what we were hoping for their help with was advocating for the bonds, getting people to vote for it. And if they've been through this process and had ownership and how we come about with that next list, that was going to be very valuable to us in getting voters to get behind it.
Yeah.
We've also, I think a lot of the board members have, I know I didn't submit a name without asking the person. I don't think by any means did they think it was a done deal, but at this point, I feel like maybe it should be people who we, that we add to the list. Maybe we go above 9 for this, but we keep them all the way through till we launch a next bond.
And so I've pulled up the names of the nominees that have been submitted to me. Are you able to see this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And I think Lyda Calvert Hayes had a question as well. A 2-year term doesn't mean that a person can't be reappointed. I think some fear in allowing the advisories and things to go on for a long time as we get into people who sort of lost touch with how things are going. So I don't know that I would extend it too much more than 2 years, maybe 3 at most, because you can always reappoint someone. And then, of course, people do move away and get tired of serving and all that. So there'll be some turnover. But, it's something to be said for different communities to be represented. But they have to keep in mind that they are actually looking out for the entire district. So we would start out with a strategic plan, the strategic goals, an overview, so that we send a message. You're looking out for the whole district, not just one corridor. And they probably, looking at some of the folks that I know, would be very fair-minded.
Yeah, this looks like a good.
I think it's also important to have someone that has served on our Buildings and Grounds Committee for some time. I think a lot is covered in Buildings and Grounds that pertain to this and pertain to the areas also. So I think that whomever we pick as our board member should be someone that has served on that committee also.
So in listening to your feedback and looking at the calendar, the map that was developed, it appears as though we are currently lacking representation in Louisville, Bethania, although that's a smaller area, but it's definitely there. Rural Hall, Tobaccoville, and Walkertown, and King. Other than that, the other municipalities that appear on the map do have at least one representative. There are 5 within the Winston-Salem area. But, based on your feedback, it sounds like maybe you'd like for me to reach out to those to the leadership in those areas to see if they would like to appoint someone, and that way we'd have representation from all areas in the county.
Yeah.
Attorney Jenkins, I would like to suggest that for the areas that we don't now have coverage for, that board members make recommendations.
And this is Board Member Kaplan, and I agree. I think in several of these areas, because we all live in different places in the county, that we might be able to make some additional recommendations. I could certainly make one in Louisville, and the person that I recommended in Clemens, I don't live in Clemens, but I know that she is the mayor pro tem, and she is very active in schools, and I'm sure that each of us could make some additional recommendations in these areas that need representation.
I believe we should follow the same process that we started, just to be fair. And for the members of this committee so far, they were named. They were recommended by board members, and I think that, to be fair, we need to follow the same process.
This is Board Member Parker, I would agree with that. And also, we don't want to forget about that we have county residents that do not belong to any municipality, me being one of them. So, we don't want to forget about those folks as well. I don't know that they need representation, but we also need people to be sensitive to county residents as well.
So, Attorney Jenkins, would it be possible, I know that you said you showed on the map where we are lacking representation, would it be possible to email the board just to put it in writing, and then we can submit names?
Absolutely. I'll send you the list of the unrepresented areas, and then you can provide those names to me. And in the meantime, I know it's not on for action, but are you comfortable if I post the proposed bylaws, at least to get feedback from the community?
I'm comfortable.
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Yeah, I have no problem with that.
I'm comfortable as well.
Okay. Well, then between now and either the next board meeting or the next time we revisit this, I will certainly get that information to the board, and I will post this for public comment.
Right. Thank you.
Thank
Any other
you.
comments? Okay. With no other comments, I believe we have one action item. And that's to consider approval of the equity advisory bylaws. And even with that approval, that still will go up for public comment. So is there a motion to approve?
Move to approve, Board Member Parker.
Do we have a second?
A second from Board Member Burke.
My apologies, Ms. Burke. I'm sorry. My apologies. I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt.
Okay. And so, Dr. Hairston, could you take the role of policy committee?
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Motsinger,
Yes.
Barbara Burke,
Yes.
Andrea Bramer, Lyda Calvert-Hayes,
Yes.
and Marilyn Parker.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you. It'll be posted until the 22nd. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we're on to building and grounds.
Thank you, Board Member Motsinger. This is Board Member Crowley with Buildings and Grounds, and we have a long agenda tonight. We're going to start with the discussion items. The first one is the Brunson Elementary Bond Project location, and Colin Moore is going to lead that for us. Mr. Moore.
Good evening. Thank you, Chair Crowley. Good evening, Dr. Hairston and board members. I want to pull up a screen. I got Nick Stevens going to share his screen. So Nick, if you can pull up the presentation for the Brunson replacement school options. So we made this presentation to a wide array of people, and we want to share that with you tonight. And in addition to not only that presentation, but also share you some input that we got from the meetings that we've had. What we have for you tonight to review are 3 replacement options, and we'll kind of tell you how we got to those 3 options. And we're also going to share with you a timeline on how we got to where we are tonight. In addition to, as I mentioned, sharing some information on the presentations that were made to staff and the community. Next slide. So I wanted to look for a second at the original bond timeline. Where were we planning to be, and what were the plans of where we would be in relation to the Brunson project? As you know, the 2016 bond was approved in November of 2016. The selection for Brunson actually began in December following that vote, and was scheduled to take place up until October. I want to tell you for a second about how that timeline comes from. It doesn't typically take 3 years to find a site, or it could take longer. That duration is regulated by when you start design. And with the cash flow, as you know, for this bond, our design was slated to begin October of 2019. So in addition to the design, we would also be doing some programming that would typically last, or was scheduled to last, about a year, from October 2019 until October 2020. Construction was slated to originally begin October of 2020 with a completion of June of 2022, allowing for a school opening of 22-23 school year. Next slide. So where are we now? So I'll talk to you about where we are. As mentioned, the bond was passed in November of 2016. The site selection process, and we'll talk about that a little bit more as we go on, currently has us until September of 2020, which is where we are now. Going forward with approval of a site for the new Brunson Elementary School, the design and programming would go for about 10 or 11 more months, take us to September of 2021, allowing for a construction start of October of 2021 with completion in June of 2023 for a 23-24 school year opening. That's, again, assuming an approval of the sites by the Board of Education in September. Talk for a minute about engaging the staff. As we encountered hurdles in the acquisition of a site, we knew that we were going to be having some delays in starting that design. Our architect came to us and suggested that we have some preliminary programming meetings that weren't site specific. It didn't matter if the Brunson site was going to any number of sites. These programming conversations could be done ahead of time to allow us to knock some of that design time off as we went forward. That's been reflected in the previous slide from this programming that we've done. So we'll just tell you for a minute about some of that engagement that we have done with WSFCS staff. Specifically, in this first point, the central office and the school staff meetings. Met with central office staff in June of last summer, 2019, a couple of times to talk about the programming that existed at Brunson and where the thoughts were with where that program would go. From there, we engaged the Brunson staff, met with the Brunson group on August 8th of 2019 last summer to talk through some of that programming piece as they were coming in to start the 19-20 school year. And then additionally through some community meetings that we had in July and August of this year. As more options became available, we also engaged the Cook staff as they became an option to this location. That staff was also engaged in July and August of this summer. So talk a minute about engaging the community. We had previously, prior to presenting the community virtual presentations that were done a couple weeks ago, we had some community meetings at Brunson on February 25th of 2019, in November of 2019, and about a month before the pandemic struck in February of 2020. So those were community meetings held at Brunson. In addition to those, we made the virtual presentations that you're essentially going to see tonight on August 26th and 27th. So we've engaged them as well. So I want to talk for just a second about those presentations that were made. The Cook and the Brunson, the Cook principals and executive cabinet were presented the information in July. The Brunson and Cook staff were presented in a joint meeting on Monday, August 10th. And then, as I mentioned, the community meetings that were held via Cable 2 and the WSFCS website on a couple different days at some times that we tried to make sure we could accommodate different viewers. Those were held, one was at noon, one was at 6 p.m. to accommodate that evening crowd, and then also one was held early in the morning, 7:30 a.m. So that gets us to the site options that we've landed on to present to you tonight. 3 options for the Board of Education to consider. Next slide. Give you a real quick overview of these 3 sites. This is Brunson at the Brunson Elementary School site. This one is currently located where the Brunson School is. You can see that area outlined in red, bound by Hawthorne Road on the west or the left, by First Street on the south, by Glade Street to the north. There's also a creek, Peters Creek, runs through the middle of the site. School is located on the east side of the creek. Parking is located on the west side of the creek. Next slide. The second option is the Brunson at Cook option. This is located at the existing Cook Literacy Model School site. You can see 11th Street to the north. Thurman Street is located to the west. Haywood Street is located to the south and wraps around the eastern side of the property. This is the existing Cook Literacy LMS school site. Next slide. The third site under consideration is the Patterson Avenue site. This site is located between Patterson Avenue and Ivy Avenue. Northwest Boulevard is approximately 150 feet to the north of the proposed property line. There is a parcel between Northwest Boulevard and this parcel. And then the abandoned 12th Street runs through the middle or the south of where our proposed area of securing is. Just as another point of reference, 11th Street, if extended, would be a little bit further south. So that gives you kind of a north-south orientation of this option. I want to just mention about our site selection process. I mentioned that process began in December of 2016. From then until spring of 2019, staff identified 10 options possible for a Bronson Elementary School relocation. We, without going into a lot of detail, but those sites basically all began to fall through for whatever reason. Some different economics, some owners not wanting to sell, but we basically came up empty. Mr. Walker and I enlisted guidance from the City of Winston-Salem and some community groups, specifically what was then the Winston-Salem Chamber of Commerce, Winston-Salem Business Inc., and the Downtown Winston-Salem Partnership. We met with those folks and the city county planning staff to get some guidance on parcels that would be located in the Brunson site. And during that meeting, they suggested that we engage Limbo Team Partners, a downtown real estate firm, and we did that. And upon doing that, we located 19 additional sites, which led to a total of 29 sites that were evaluated and considered for the Brunson Elementary School. A real quick overview of what that site selection process looked like. This is a graph or hand document from Limbo Team Partners that kind of identifies that 4-step process. Step 1, where we research the properties. Step 2, we kind of review and rank those sites using a green, yellow, and red system. Step 3 is we would address the sites that made it into the green and yellow list and further identify those. And then step 4 was locating the ideal site that was not a school-owned property in the Brunson district. Aubrey Limble is a member of Limble Team Partners. He is on the call and would be welcome to field any questions you might have after the presentation. Talk a little bit more specifically about each site. This is the Brunson site outlined in yellow. As you can see, bound by the City of Winston-Salem downtown to the far east. Wake Forest Baptist Medical Center is in the western part of the Brunson district. You can see the Truist Stadium, formerly Dash Stadium, just to the east of the Brunson site. Brunson is located by a red pin in the middle of the site. So this is some of the areas in the surrounding area of Brunson. Some of the things that happen around Brunson: historic neighborhoods. About 42% of the households in the Brunson district, in this Brunson geographical area, not necessarily the ones that attend Brunson, but the household income in the Brunson district, about 42% is over $50,000. It's about a 5-minute drive to downtown Winston-Salem, and it's walking distance to Wake Forest Baptist Health and Haynes Park. See just some pictures of some areas here. Mentioned Baptist Hospital. You got the West End area. You've got Haynes Park. Again, all within that Brunson district. Next slide. So some surrounding areas of the Cook site. You can see Cook Literacy Model School located to the western side of this district. You can see it outlined in green. A new Paisley Lawrence School was just opened in August 2019. That's within walking distance of the Cook site. Also to the far east in this zone is the Choice Neighborhoods Grant, part of a grant that was received by the city of Winston-Salem, $30 million improvements to some areas. There is an area that is, again, on the eastern side of the Cook zone that will be affected by this grant. Again, some highlights of this area that in the Cook site, it is walking distance to a new middle school. About 87% of the household income in this district is less than $50,000. There are some industrial sites located within the zone that allow for some future development. And again, as I mentioned, this area is affected by the C&I grant. Again, some graphical representations or some pictorials of some things that may look. You got Paisley Ranch located in the top left. The renderings that we have received from the Housing Authority of Winston-Salem of what these improvements with the C&I grant would look like in a site plan of the affected areas. Next slide. The Patterson Avenue site is located in what is known as Industry Hill in the northern part of downtown Winston-Salem. It's bordered by the Innovation Quarter, not the property, the Industry Hill area is bordered by Wake Forest Innovation Quarter to the south. There is a Winston-Salem Police Department Beatty Training Center immediately to the west of the property. Samaritan's Ministries is located on the parcel north of the property. Downtown Winston-Salem is just a short walking distance from the site, and this is a total 17-acre site, of which Winston-Salem County Schools has an option on approximately 10 acres. The other 7 acres is a planned residential development. Again, some points of this Patterson site is the entertainment district and WFIQ are both in walking distance. And as I mentioned, it's adjacent to the Samaritan Ministries and the Beatty Center. A few representations of what some of this residential area that's planned for this site would look like. The white box in the back would be essentially where the school would be located. So you see some of the planned residential areas for the adjoining parcel of land. We wanted to just mention to you some of the site testing that's taken place or that we have records of that was paid for by WSFCS on all 3 sites. At the Brunson site, there was a report of limited groundwater and soil assessment that was done June of 2020. At the Cook site, we have some subsurface investigation that's a little bit old, but that was done with some construction that was done at the Cook site back in 1978 by Law Engineering, and also a subsurface exploration report from 1984 by Engineering Tectonics. At the Patterson Avenue site, there was a Phase 1 environmental site assessment done in September of 2019 and a Phase 2 ESA that was performed in February of 2020. Just a quick summary of some of the testing that was done. As we move on to the plans and what a school would look like on the site, we have engaged Walter Robbs to be the architect for this project. They've been highly involved in the project. And again, Wesley Curtis is on the call and we'll be happy to field any questions upon the completion of this presentation. But just to kind of give you an overview of where they are, been working through some conceptual design and some schematics design pieces of this project. Again, these are all flexible and can work depending on whatever site would go to. Moving forward from that, we would move into design development, get a little bit more specific with some construction documents, and then into construction administration during the construction of the project. I wanted to look just to kind of give you some ideas, some conceptual concepts, if you will, on each of the 3 sites. For the Brunson site, you again see the aerial here. Some possibilities here you can see in the 4 visuals on the 4 corners, some possibilities. These white boxes just represent some schools, again, or some building locations. The creek, again, is located in the middle of the site. Due to some constraints with the construction and the constructability of the site, we proposed to locate the new school on the west side of the creek and convert the east side to a play area. We can dig, again, as we go further into site selection, we would dig more specifically on what that piece looks like. But just some ideas of what a school would look like on that property. Next slide. As we look at the Brunson and Cook concept, you can again see in the middle page the schematic of how things would look. You would orient the school basically on an east-west axis to allow for maximum exposure with sunlight and for both heating and cooling provisions, and for just ambiance in the school. You see the views on the 4 renderings or the 4 concepts on the sides. One of the really spectacular views is the intersection of Thurman Street and Haywood Street in that top right corner. That would be your view kind of looking up the hill toward a new school. And that's the Brunson at Cook site. Next slide. So the Brunson at Patterson would be located likewise, as we mentioned earlier, between Patterson Avenue and Ivy. You can possibly see some concepts of what a building would look like. Some car parking and bus parking kind of brought out to the side with access from both Patterson Avenue and Ivy Avenue. Again, a building located or situated on the east-west axis, located on the north end of the property. And that's kind of the Brunson-Patterson concept drawings. So we wanted to give you an overview, cost overview of all 3 options. We want to kind of look at where those costs would be located. We've engaged Gilbane Construction Company is our construction manager at risk, and they've been with us through the process. David Repnick with Gilbane is again on the call and can answer any questions you may have. But just to kind of give you an overview, we break it down into what we call hard costs and soft costs. Hard costs are those costs of construction and land development that are kind of hard, if you will. We know what those costs approximately are going to be. Whereas the soft costs will kind of fluctuate depending on what a building would look like. So the land and site development costs, just some reasons for the differences in the numbers. At the Brunson, we are having to bring import in some fill into the site to deal with the floodplain. Those monies are included in the Brunson estimate. And in addition to that, we also will be constructing a structural retaining wall, and there will be the installation of a traffic and pedestrian bridge. Money also included there for remediation by a vapor intrusion system at the Brunson site, just to protect from any vapors that may be in there. At the Cook site, there will be a structural retaining wall, and again, more money's in for vapor remediation if that's needed as well. Those monies are included in the estimate for the Cook construction. And at Patterson Avenue, the additional cost there above the Cook baseline is there are a lot more buildings located on that site that would have to be demolished. So that money is reflected in here. It is a larger site, so there is more site development costs. We use a baseline of $200,000 per acre to develop the site. The Patterson Avenue site, with its 10.7 acres, that contributed some extra costs there. And then in addition, money is included for remediation. The construction costs at Brunson, those additional costs there are site restrictions, causing an additional or a longer schedule. They're having to mobilize a tower crane to get materials from one side of the creek to the other, or to move things across as the demolition occurs. So there's money there included for that. The Brunson Cook option includes an additional 126 students that we'll talk about shortly. And then the 23.9 is kind of a baseline for the Patterson Avenue. So we talk about remediation, kind of talk about what this remediation piece, I'm sorry, I jumped ahead of myself. Thanks, Nick. The number of students, we're looking at that is the Brunson and Patterson Avenue are an 800 baseline number of students that was proposed in the bond. At Cook, as we're merging the two sites or the two zones, would result in 926 students. Soft costs that we talk about are the design, the testing, the relocation, those kind of things that play in. Those costs are included in our numbers as well. So, all right, next slide. Just to quickly talk about what remediation is. I mentioned that in both sites. That's remediation piece is basically removing or correcting a fault. And we do have testing indicates there's nothing in these any of these 3 sites that's not uncommon in an urban area. The remediation plan is basically the installation of a vapor barrier system, a slab on grade areas, and a cap barrier system. We are participating in the DEQ's brownfields program to ensure adherence to our remediation. Next slide. Talk a minute about that student assignment. You can look through, and Nick, you can go ahead and finish out this slide, but you can see the average enrollments, the residential students, and the students attending from outside the residential zones. These numbers, again, this Brunson Elementary was an 800 student capacity, and with a merger would result in a 926 student capacity. We mentioned the merger of Brunson and Cook. I want to just quickly talk about a couple things there. This only happens if the Brunson and Cook option is accepted by the Board of Education. A school there would highlight equity on the Cook property, on the Cook site. This option is the only one that has redrawn boundary implications, and it is the only one that would result in the renaming. So we just kind of briefly outlined to the public what our school renaming policy looks like. We talk about having to construct on a school site, so the relocation piece, if that happens, we would have to look at a swing school site, or we would disperse students in the schools to other schools in the district. Again, that's a decision would ultimately be made by the Board of Education, by you. Talked about some pros and cons of the Brunson and Brunson site. Walkability, history of the school site, centrally located. It's part of the existing neighborhood. The cons of this site are the construction costs, the flood zone, bus and car traffic, and students having to be relocated during construction. At Cook, again, it's centrally located in the combined zones. No cost would be needed for an addition for the land at Cook. Would be a larger facility, and it would be a new building for 2 school districts or 2 school zones. Cons to this location are, again, having to relocate students, the topography of the site, and the school traffic on the Thurman Street site. At Brunson and Paterson, pros here are the proximity to WFIQ and downtown Winston-Salem, and the proximity to STEM resources. It's a relatively flat site, and there would be no relocation of students during construction. Some cons to this site are the distance from Brunson, from the existing Brunson school. Another con is a proximity to other elementary schools and the environmental concerns at that site. So in conclusion, we presented this information to staff and to the community. We have made a survey available up until Friday, September 4th, 2020. And that survey, we had 598 participants as of 5 o'clock on Friday, September 4th. 47% from the community, 21% identified themselves as a Brunson or Cook parent, 18% staff, 13% were students. Of those that participated, we had 67% that favored the Brunson at Patterson site, 24% of Brunson at Brunson site, and 8% of Brunson at Cook site. So with those comments, I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Hairston for any final comments she has.
Well, I had a couple of questions, Board Member Kaplan and Board Member Motzinger, while I pull up my screen.
Okay, thanks. So I had heard in some conversations that we had that 2 schools in the state, one of them is a charter, there's another, have been built on brownfield sites. Can you comment about those 2 schools, how long they've existed on the site? Are there any environmental issues? If you could just comment on that.
Yes, I'll be glad to. One of them is actually located in Winston-Salem. It's the Carter G. Woodson School, is a brownfields program site. That one, I apologize. I can get the information. I don't recall what year that was constructed. The other is a charter school for Raleigh Charter School. It was part of a larger developed site and multi-tenant facility that was constructed, and they are housed on that one. Again, I apologize, Ms. Cab, I don't know the dates, but I can get that information for you.
That would be really helpful so we could compare. Thank you.
And Ms. Motzinger had a question, I think, Colin.
Okay.
Ms. Motzinger?
No, sometimes the unmuting is harder than it should be. I had a couple questions. Colin, you went past the total cost for the 3 schools very quickly. I know you were trying to get out a lot of information. Could you go back to what the total cost for the schools was?
Yeah, Nick, can you pull that slide? Can you pull that slide back up? I know that's having to go back and find it, but
I don't want it raised.
But it was in there.
It's in there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 42.1, 36.6, and 34.6. Thank you. I had the question I also had when you mentioned the survey results. Was it 67% wanted Patterson? Did I hear that correctly?
Yes, ma'am.
That the majority of people who filled out a survey,
Yes,
that's
ma'am.
what they wanted.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. There are a couple concerns I have about, is this a good time to share concerns, or would you like to speak first?
Well, we haven't really finished the presentation, so if...
Okay, why don't
yeah.
I wait? Thank you.
Board Member Kaplan, and so if you need any clarity from Colin, Ms. Parker?
Yeah, I just am just wondering if they have experienced any problems building on those brown sites that you know of. You probably wouldn't know about the Raleigh one, but you might know about the Winston-Salem one.
We didn't ask, we can check.
Okay, great.
Ms. Burke?
I'm sorry, Ms. Parker. I still got my question, sorry. I was trying
sorry.
I'm trying to mute. So the survey results, could you give us those again? How the number of community members, parents, and students percentages that responded, as well as the tally for what they wanted the sites. Sorry, that I was writing as fast as I could.
I think it was 67% of the group mentioned Patterson, and there was 8% with, and this was community and staff mentioned indicated Cook, and I think the remainder was about 30. Is that right, Colin?
Yes, ma'am. 24% were at Brunson.
Okay.
24, and also my other question is, can we see that survey, the questions asked, and all those things? Can we be privy to that?
Oh yes, we can send you the survey. I'll ask Andy Kraft to send you the survey. Sure.
That'd be great.
He took for just sake of time, he took the pros and cons of each site, what was mentioned in the presentation. And I think Ms. Burke had a question.
Yes, Dr. Harrison. I do have questions, but I do understand that the presentation has not been completed, so I can wait until the end of the presentation. Thank you.
So as we went through this process and we've gone through the timeline, I think when Mr. Moore presented the request initially to build on the Patterson site, it was voted that we go back and do more work. That was not accepted. So we went back to meet with different ones about the work. And we talked about the Patterson site because it is designated as a possible brownfield program site for the brownfield program. And then we looked at Cook on Cook, and the reason it's so very expensive, $42 million, I believe, is because of all of the environmental work that has to go around the canal that runs through there, the changes in the zoning. And then we looked at Cook because of the proximity. And I wanted to ask our architect to talk about when you combine two schools, what is the process for working to have those schools come together as one, such as Paisley and Lawrence. So I asked him to be on the call this evening. I hope he's on the call, is he?
Yes, I am.
Okay, can you unmute, or are you okay muted?
Am I still muted?
Yeah.
No, you're unmuted.
Okay, great. If you could go through, Ms. Curtis, the process.
Sure. Basically, Dr. Harris, the process really starts with meeting with both staffs. We went through the same process, I guess, that you're familiar with the Paisley Lawrence school. And part of the process began meeting with each staff separately, talking to the principal, getting a good understanding about how each group operates, so we understand their goals, how they function, because every school functions a little bit different. Although the program may be basically the same, they function a little bit different. So we try to meet with each staff separately. After we have a process where we actually graphically show information gathered, so that as we obtain information, we post it up, the staff, the principal can review it. And then after we have met with both schools, we have a process where they both can sit down and graphically see where the various needs, wants are, and see how the two may merge. One of the things we try to do, just to try to make sure we can be as efficient regarding cost is to try to see where there's some overlaps and find other opportunities that where maybe the two schools can work together. And so once we've done that, we've identified all the various needs from the two groups. We can pull those together, see where there's overlap. Then we start to then develop the programming, develop the how the school functions, so that in the end we've got an end product like Paisley to Ranch. You've got two basic schools, but they function together and operate together, and each of their support needs are there.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And so as we continued to look at the sites, we realized we looked at proximity and student attendance data. One of the things Mr. Moore mentioned was the proximity of Patterson to the current Brunson. Brunson Elementary is 2.1 miles from the Patterson site, and some of you are runners, and you saw that's no distance, but it is 2.1 miles. Brunson from Cook is 1.5 miles. The furthest point of a current student from the new Patterson site is 2.8 miles. The furthest point from Cook is 1.7 miles. There's 101 students living in the Cook attendance zone that live within a half a mile of the Patterson site. So as we really looked at that, the question became, when you build a new site on Patterson, and Mr. Moore did mention this, one of the downfalls, it places you in close proximity to Kimberly Park, Cook, and Ashland. And so the question becomes, what do you do with those underserved, under-enrolled schools? Does that pull even more students from those schools? Because Cook then would have 101 students within eye shot of a brand new school. So the question we would have is, do you allow those 101 students to leave Cook and go right down the street in walking distance to a new school? And what does that do to the Cook community? 276 of the Cook students live within 1 mile of the Patterson site, same question. If you look at the Cook site, Cook Elementary is 0.6 miles from Paisley School. We've successfully combined. It has a great reputation. And currently 29 students of Cook Elementary are enrolled in Brunson. I did not do an analysis of Brunson on Brunson because you saw that was 42 million. And the question we had to ask ourselves in looking at our strategic plan, because we were so intentional to talk about equity and equal facilities, are we willing to spend the 42 million we would put at Brunson on Brunson around the corner at Ashley, should that come on board, and now that we purchased that property? We also looked at the brownfield. It would be a brownfield project or part of the brownfields program, North Carolina brownfields program. And we took a look at what's important. A brownfield site is important because it safely recycles the use of land. It protects the environment by reducing the presence of hazardous substances. So you heard Mr. Moore speak to remediation of the property. So anything that the property, any challenges the property had would be remediated, and he mentioned those systems. The report that came back, of course, said we could never use the well water. Well, we were on city water, and we would not use well water on that site, but it is a point of reference. It makes previously dangerous land usable, improves local ecology, increases property values, and protects human health. This proposed site would more than likely qualify as a project and a part of the bigger brownfields program. Areas to consider: the environmental site assessment. There has been a site assessment, and there would be remediation required. Other projects we looked at, as he mentioned, were 2 charter schools, and also the other many programs that have been successful using the application process. I mean, if you look at the approved list of projects, it's pretty massive across the state, but you'll realize these are choice opportunities. And of course, I talked to one of you about future urban development. You'll find that these sites are not unusual in Los Angeles, Chicago, and other areas. And so as we go through the decision-making process, the questions we had to answer put us in a place of, wow, there are 3 opportunities here, and all 3 present its level of challenges. But when you look at using the Patterson Avenue site, the recommendation is that those be choice opportunities. Building a school and requiring that to be the attendance zone for students will buy us lots and lots and lots of time spent on justification of selection of that site. We will have many parents. We've already received emails with false information, but some with accurate information. And we will spend more time trying to justify this decision, and we will be one of the first public schools to place a required attendance zone school right there on that type of site, the first that we can find. And so my suggestion is when you decide to, or we decide to select those sites, then you make them choice sites so that people know more about the site, more about the remediation process, and more about what has gone into that site. So it's a choice. You're not forcing children into a site. When you look at the Brunson on Bronson, it really is cost prohibitive. And each of these sites will require value engineering to bring them down to the budget. And when they come down to the budget, they will still be great sites and great facilities, with the exception of Brunson on Bronson. We'll be required to spend a significant amount of money to have Brunson at the Brunson site. So after looking at this in totality, the recommendation this evening is to place the new Brunson Elementary on the elementary site, combine the 2 communities, and create a learning environment for both communities that are positive and mirror the work that is happening at Paisley and Loran.
Okay, so do we have any other questions for Dr. Harrison or for Mr. Moore about Brunson?
Yes, this is Board Member Burke.
Yes.
A question.
I do have one question. This is Board Member Hayes Calvert.
Ms. Calvert Hayes, Ms. Burke has the floor.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I'll call on you after Ms. Montsinger.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Board Member Crowley. The first question I have is about the merger. It's regarding the merger. Does the merger only apply if Bronson will be built at the Cook site, or does the merger apply also if the new Brunson is built at the Patterson location?
So the reality is that if it's built at the Patterson location, there will not be a merger, so to speak. However, having 100 Cook students a half a mile from the site may require us to look at attendance zones, meaning that 100 students from Cook may want to go within the half a mile range to go to that school. So there will be no merger at that opportunity unless you all decided that we would use Patterson and bring both schools together. That is an option.
Okay, thank you. And my next question, Dr. Harrison, and you did explain about the residential area and the students and the number of students coming from different various locations. I'm sorry, I'm not totally clear. So my question is, can you tell me how the residential boundaries would change? I know how they look now, but if we have the merger at the Cook location, or if we have the merger at the Patterson location, how will those residential boundaries change?
So a merger and the Cook site would mean that we would take all of the Cook attendance zone and all of the Brunson and bring them together. There would be no adjustment beyond merging the 2 boundaries. A merger at the Patterson site would do the same if it were a merger. However, the Patterson site sits right there on the edge of the Brunson attendance zone. So there is no need to change attendance zones unless you're comfortable with 101 students from Cook being a half a mile within a brand new school and not attending. So that would be the difference.
What's the enrollment of, at Cook right now?
Well, there's a residential enrollment, and then there's another, I think he had that on the presentation. Do you have that, Colin? Or maybe
Yes, ma'am,
Milan
I do.
is on there.
The 2019, 2020 enrollments at Brunson were 479 and at Cook were 242.
Okay, and you said 242 at Cook.
Yes.
Does that include, is that the residential enrollment, or does that include everybody, all of the students?
That's all the students. That's the enrollment at Cook.
Okay, and you said 479 for Brunson.
Yes, ma'am.
And we're talking about a facility that would have the capacity for about 800 students if we build at the Patterson location.
Yes, ma'am. Both of the Cook would have a greater capacity, and the Patterson would be about 800. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, let me see if I have another question. Okay, and so we're talking about merging, and we know that both schools have different themes. Both schools have different magnets, and both schools are named for after very prominent people who have a significant role in our community. What are we going to do about the names of the schools and
Well, I think that, if I may say, I think that one of the reasons was Wesley Curtis was on the call, was his discussion about how they handled, or how you all handled, he handled with us the Paisley Lorraine. And so what we're saying, and Ms. Burke, I want to kind of be clear, the merger, the recommendation is Cook and Brunson at Cook for merger. The Patterson Avenue is simply Brunson. That's the recommendation there. There was no recommendation to merge those two in the plan. My only reason for bringing up the Cook students was because they would be a half a mile within a new school. So that was the recommendation there. So, but it would be a collaboration with the community to honor the history of both and the goals of both schools. Okay.
Okay, and so I know that was not the recommendation, but I would like to say that if we do move in the direction of the Patterson location, I would like to suggest, propose, recommend that we combine Cook and Bronson at the Patterson location. I believe it would be a great opportunity for the students who attend Cook to be inside a beautiful, brand new environment also. Thank you.
Are you watching? You got it, Ms. Crone.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Okay, I believe that board member Motzinger was next.
Thank you, Leah. I have a couple of concerns about, first, a combination of schools. One is, I don't think Paisley Lorance is really a very good example of what this kind of merger is. Lorance is required really by federal law to be tied to another school. It can't be a standalone school. It had been at Haynes before. All of the uproar around Haynes actually left the Lorance families first at Atkins, but actually choosing to really wanting to be aligned with a different school. And there's a lot of water under that bridge that we don't need to go swimming tonight. But I don't think Paisley Lorance is a good example of a merger of schools. My biggest concern about mergers of schools, and I think the Philo Hill and Diggs Latham are better examples, is that to me, it's like the old traditional patriarchal marriage where two become one and the one is him. And it scares me that I feel like it's very easy for Cook to disappear in a merger of that sort. And my other very big concern, and it is profoundly important given the times we're living in where so many people do not understand science. They don't understand science, is that if we walk away from brownfields, we are basically walking away from building urban schools in the future. And that scares me very much long term. And so I think it's critically important that we think this through, that brownfields are urban landscapes, and almost all urban landscapes are indeed brownfields. I would also like to say that I was on the board when we chose the Career Center site, and there was a great deal of conflict in the community and amongst the board about building what people saw as a dangerous site. And it has turned out to be an extraordinary site, the best view of downtown Winston-Salem in all of our community is seen at Career Center. And it's a vibrant and productive school. So I think schools actually have a positive impact on neighborhoods. They actually help transform neighborhoods. And for those reasons, I'm very concerned about not choosing the Patterson Avenue site. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Montsinger. Board Member Calvert Hayes.
Yes, thank you. I'm a little, is monitored by the state of North Carolina?
No, you're hard to hear.
Is that something that the Winston and Forsyth County schools would have to monitor on a regular basis? Or how exactly is that done? Because I would think, and this is just surmising, that there are a lot of areas in our downtown that on brownfield sites here in Salem. And I'm just concerned as to how that is monitored. Is it monitored, or who is that left up to? I just need more information on this, please.
So Colin has that information on the, it's really the remediation. Colin, you addressed that before.
Yes, ma'am, on the remediation slide in the presentation.
Yeah, she wants to know who monitors the remediation process, who monitors the vapor releases.
Yeah.
So that's established as part of the DEQ or as part of the Brownfields program. They will establish what that process looks like, and then the device is in place. So yes, ma'am, that's part of the process of the Brownfields program. That's how they ensure compliance, that if you build it as per their requirements, then they take the liability for anything that goes on at the site.
Well, you have to follow their monitoring requirements, Ms. Calvert Hayes. If you don't follow the monitoring requirements, they do not assume liability. Okay.
This is Elizabeth. I would just like
appreciate you letting me know about that.
Okay, and then I think we have Ms. Jones. I think we have Ms. Jones next.
Yes, Ms. Jones had her hand up next.
Thank you. I just had a question about, we're kind of talking about current attendance zones, and I know that we have a committee. I believe we've been hired a consulting firm to help us look at our zones across the district. I know we haven't met recently, but what would that have we talked about with our consultant, or is this some recommendations from the consultant about what these zones would look like? Because I think we were kind of slated to take maybe that work back up in October or sometime this fall. And so when we're speaking of these zones, right, we're kind of talking about the current zones, and I think we were saying we wanted to make some shifts. This all started around the conversation of having a new middle school and what that would look like across the district. So that was my first question. And then the second one kind of goes along with that, and that would also be, there's been conversation around bringing our successful magnets into the center, more or less, of the county. And so our HAG has been very successful with this. Brunson had limited space at their current site. So would this also be an opportunity to bring the entire elementary HAG program back in one building? And then at the Patterson Avenue site or the Cook site, is there room, and I'm thinking there may not be at the existing Cook site, but is there room to also bring in the middle school program? People in the community have talked about wanting that middle school, I guess, HAG 3rd grade through 8th grade kind of located on one campus.
So to speak to your, right now, this year, we would only bring forward the middle school attendance zones. We spent a lot of time trying to get a proposal together for you all in October. So it's such a massive undertaking because of the, just a lot of things going on. But our attendance work this year would be middle school. It's hard to make commitments about attendance zones that might come up 2 or 3 years down the road. Other than if you combine 2 sites, you want their attendance zones to combine and remain fluid. It would help if we had a determination to guide, some guidance there. So you also have a new Ashley, hopefully coming on board in years to come. So that's hard to project out. Also, I think to really say that we're looking at bringing the magnet to a central location, I think runs counter to what we would committed to bringing the communities together to talk about. And I personally did open, my first principalship was combining 2 middle schools, by the way. And so I combined 2 middle schools. I was a new principal, and it was very successful, and it was around the middle school model. So I actually had to do the work. And so we brought Wesley Curtis on board to talk about a commitment to the community to bring them into the fold. So I think if that's something the community brings up and they want to see, then I think I could say, yes, that's where we want to be. But I don't think we should go into this with preconceived notions other than we have 2 schools that we're going to bring together to honor their history.
Okay, great. Thank you. We also had Board Member Parker with her hand up, and then Board Member Burke, and then Board Member Montsinger. Ms. Parker.
Thank you. Going back to the survey, can we tell what the responses were from parents and from staff? Is it disaggregated in that manner?
Well, we had them together and we did disaggregate them, and I will tell you the majority of both staffs, because we looked at Brunson for Paterson. We didn't ask Cook about Paterson, or maybe it was on the survey, but it was about a 47% for staff. We unfortunately combined the 2 surveys, which kind of threw that. And unfortunately, at the last hour, it was apparent that about 150 people logged in and sort of skewed some of the data at the last hour of whatever. So before that happened, when we looked at the data, it was not far, I will say, in each instance. But I will say in our presentation, we did mention the remediation and the brownfields application. But Ms. Parker, I will say that my experience has been it only takes about 10 parents to fight you on a remediation process and on what they can perceive to be a contaminated landfill, and it will feel like 1,000 parents. And so that is what we've really looked at, is the requirement. If you made that a choice school, where parents would not be required to attend there, if their child was a part of that community, it would be smooth sailing. But without being a choice school, it is, you have some challenges. We have some challenges ahead with that. So that I can't say that the majority of the folks, majority of them thought that Patterson would be an appropriate site. I'm not sure how they made that decision, however. We did not ask for further detail.
Okay, and I will add that Mr. Kraft sent the survey, but that's exactly what he sent, the survey. He did not send, I think the request was actually for the data from the survey. He just sent a copy of the questions that were on the survey.
Right.
Yeah, if we could get both of those, that would be helpful. My other question is, going back to the days whenever we did combine Diggs and Latham, there was a real effort when we combined those two about making sure that we had the culture and the magnet portion of those schools represented, and so that Diggs at that time was an arts magnet, and we made sure that we incorporated all of those things. You've got two here, a STEM school and a literacy model school, and I just, do we have a plan? If we do merge the two schools, about how we are going to incorporate, I worry about a building's one thing, but a curriculum and also having the culture of a school follow that as well is extremely important. So, do we have a plan? Are we in process?
Well, Ms. Parker, we're trying to get, we've trying to get to the point where we have a site and we do have a process in place. And I think what we have is a commitment to bring both staff together. I think from what I've read from the staff and from the community, the last thing they want us to do is to give you a plan. They're not interested in me giving you a plan. What they're interested in is this goes forward. They want to be involved in the process. And I think that's the commitment that the community is asking for.
Yeah, sure. No, I agree that they need to be a part of that process. I just want to make sure that if we do go forward with the merging of two schools, that we're very, very cognizant of that, and that's one of our main focuses going forward if we do decide to merge the two. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next is Board Member Burke.
Thank you, Board Member Crowley. I wanted to ask about the merger with Brunson going to the Cook site. Does this mean that we will have a totally brand new structure at the Cook site, or will we have the old Cook structure and a new structure put on the same property?
It's a brand new site. It's a brand new, it would be demolished in a brand new site, brand new school.
Okay, and then my last question, and this may have been answered, so I apologize if it has. For the Brunson location, I know that property is really, the school is really owned by the county, but I'm sure that we will benefit in some way as far as from the sale of the property. Have we talked about that, and how much will we gain?
So we have had offers on that property, and I don't know if Daryl's on the call, but we've had offers on the property. Maybe he can give us a range of what the offers have been, Mr. Walker.
Yes, ma'am. We've had a couple of different developers or a agent representing a couple of developers inquire about that particular property. Colin, you may have more of the specific dollar amount that they've discussed, but it is quite lucrative, to be honest with you. And that this development is around some apartments or other residential development that would take place there. Colin, do you have that specific dollar amount that she reached out to us?
We don't have an exact dollar amount, but the order of magnitude is $2 million.
Yeah.
So that's not a locked-in option amount by any means, but that's an order of magnitude of about how much they're talking about an offer.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, on the site analysis attachment, it was listed at 2.7, just over 2.7 million for the Brunson site. Okay, I have Ms. Motzinger next with a question.
This is Elizabeth, and I know I am pedantic and annoying. I understand that. My concern about brownfields and discussion about brownfields is that we live in a society that is profoundly ignorant about science and continues to be ignorant about science, almost willfully so. The most polluted site in Forsyth County is Whitaker Park, which is also the hub of innovation. Right past Whitaker Park is the innovation quarter, which is turning into one of the real jewels of the community and is where a medical school is placed. So it is really important that we model our belief in science and our belief in mitigation and resolution. And I find it very troubling that we make decisions based on perception rather than reality. And that is just what I felt absolutely it was essential to say, that we should not be ruling out things because of perception, regardless of how difficult that is politically. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Motzinger. And we have Chair Woodbury.
Thank you, Board Member Crowley. I'm trying to bring up my camera. Thank you for allowing me to speak, and forgive I see I'm kind of dark here, but I just wanted to, expound upon, I sent the board and the superintendent some, I will admit, surface level research, but yet and still, I thought some great research around brownfield work, especially from the historical context. And, this issue has been weighing on me because of, like, Board Member Motzinger has said, we're in a time where, urban development is what it is, and we're going to have to think about what the future of schools look like if we're going to have them accessible to urban communities. The flip side of that is everybody knows when you say urban, you mean Black, you mean poor, you mean underserved. And so then are we looking at issues around environmental racism? Are we looking at issues around gentrification? I think when we look at brownfield sites, places like Los Angeles and New York, they're at the place where, what else are we to do? But if right now we have an option to choose something else, other than maybe we just don't have any choice, where are we to build, then I think we have to think seriously about the options that we have, but definitely start to look at collectively as a community, meaning the county, the school system, the city, about how to think about utilizing brownfield sites. Because I tell you, when I did the research just from a historical context around brownfield, it didn't make me feel good, because the perception that could be ascertained from the research is that it's built upon politics that's influenced by capitalist lobbying to transform out of the industrial age into now the information age, because we don't need those manufacturing sites anymore, but they're there. What are we going to do with them? Nevertheless, if they're dangerous, what are we going to do with that property that's sitting there and that's under development? I've just not seen in the historical context and the referencing of brownfield sites that there was a consideration around, how it would impact, per se, children and poor people. It was just around, well, if it started in the 1990s, in response to several court cases that caused lenders to redline contaminated properties. That's the kind of information that, I'm finding, and it's concerning as a board member, but I do realize what Board Member Motsinger is saying, that, we're coming to a point where we may not have a lot of choices, but if as a board, we do have a choice to, sort of if we do have a choice as a board to consider other sites, I think we need to spend more time with the superintendent and staff relatively to consider other sites based on what our options are. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Woodbury. Are there any other questions? I don't see any other hands up on this topic. So if that is the case, we'll move on to North Forsyth High School renovation schematic plans with Mr. Moore.
All right, well, let's hop in the car. We'll take off up 52. So spend a lot of time out on Patterson Avenue and Hawthorne and 11th Street. So moving up to Shadowlawn Drive, we're excited about what we've got to bring to you for North Forsyth. Laura, if you can pull up that schematic that goes with this, that'd be great. So we're going to show you tonight a schematic, and it's real simple. It's 4 or 5 just pages you've got in your packet of a schematic for North Forsyth. We've also got included in your booklet, and we're joined on the call by Kristen Cullen and Jason Lemke with DLR Design Group. They put together a booklet that's in your package, and it's 102 pages, and for reasons you can probably understand why, we're not going to go through that booklet tonight. But when they presented this booklet to me, it was my first thing I did was just shake my head. I don't have time to look at this. But they have implemented a design process that represents a comprehensive stakeholder-driven approach to developing the future of North Forsyth. I'm excited about that. Every page of the booklet that's in your packet illustrates results from some stakeholder, from their insight, their dedicated participation. There are innovative and bold strategies that were introduced and molded, and they really embraced the staff, the students it started kind of in the middle or 2 months into the coronavirus, and it allowed us to get that input. That booklet tells you how they got where they are. What you've got here on the screen is the site plan for North Forsyth, showing you some very modest site improvements that we would make to the process. As you flip down to the next page, you can kind of see there some of the floor plans. The floor plan look that we're providing to you as a schematic. Some of the things that we highlight here, we're concentrating the administrative area in the northeast. We're establishing in that northwest corner, and just for reference, north is up on the page. But that northwest area, we're converting that classroom wing to having like a nursing suite that would kind of like be the hub for other health science and CTE classes. Doing some modifications in the media center to make it more engaging. The entry has been moved to adjacent to the cafeteria, and you'll see on the elevation what that looks like, to kind of give it a defined entrance to North Forsyth. You walk up, you don't know which door you should go in on which side of the auditorium, so we're trying to better define that. We're locating some assistant principals throughout the area. The circulation is redirected around the nursing suite that I mentioned in the northwest wing. So you can kind of see some of the things that we're doing as part of this design and this schematic plan. We'll move forward with that upon approval to doing a little bit more design development and construction drawings. A couple, as our policy requires, are some elevations of the building. So scrolling down, you can kind of see what these elevations would look like as on this rendering. It's not, we're not doing any modifications to the structure of the building per se. We're just trying to spruce up with some windows, doing some improvements to the entries. And the next few pages are just some view ends or zone ends of some of the areas that you would entry. So that for your consideration. And again, if you have any questions, I also have Melita Wise is on the call. I would encourage her if she had anything she wanted to say during this process, she can certainly speak to it. And if you had any questions regarding the this schematic process, DLR Design Group is on the call as well.
Thanks, Colin. I'm looking to see if we have any hands up for questions on this. Ms. Wise, would you like to add anything?
Sure. I think the thing that I appreciated most about the process was just being able to have my staff and my student community involved in the process. We've had a vision for North Forsyth as a health science magnet school for 5 years now, and we've got programming that aligns with that vision. And DLR has really helped us to kind of envision a facility that also reflects that. And the facility is innovative and definitely incorporates the things that are important to us moving forward with that magnet program.
Great, thank you. Okay, the next item is also with Mr. Moore, North Forsyth High School construction manager selection.
Yes, Madam Chair. This is also related to North Forsyth. We selected as construction manager risk procurement method for the contractors because of the phasing that's going to go along with the project, and because we have several areas not anticipated or not included in the bond to touch. We want to find a way to maximize the use of the dollars and bring a construction manager on. So we solicited proposals in July. You have a memo in your package that will outline our process. It'll indicate the committee members that were part of the process. We had 16 firms submit qualifications packages. The committee narrowed down the list to 4, of which we interviewed, and following those interviews, ranked Vinoy Construction of Winston-Salem as to provide pre-construction services and to be selected as construction manager at risk. So we're asking tonight for approval of Vinoy Construction as a CM at risk by the Building and Grounds Committee, and the approval of the pre-construction services contract for $75,000.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Moore. Are there any questions for Mr. Moore about that contract? Okay, great. We're going to move on to the 2020-2022 2/3 bond capital project spending plan with Mr. Teague.
Good evening. The that you have is basically a quick breakdown on what the two different bond funding sources are. We have the 2020 maintenance that was out of the 2016 bond, and those projects are basically laid out by year. We're and going through the year with that. Lauren, okay. The 2022 2/3 bonds, those are part of the 10-year plan. Those projects are put together through life cycle replacement, the roofs, through the roofing assessments that we have had, and also from the work order system that gives us a data of history with problems with the equipment. Most all the equipment that we replace is well beyond its life cycle replacement. So that's how those two plans are kind of put together. That is the 2/3 bond projects. We've got roofing projects, East on Glen, Main Street, HVAC at the downtown school, Reagan, ERV, East on, the replacing the cooling tower at South Fork. The next item is kind of new to you guys and new to us too. This is installing a bipolar ionization. We've been looking for quite some time of how we improve the health of our buildings. We've done a lot of research on this. This has really come out since the COVID. These are units that you put in the existing air handlers, and basically what they do is there's a lot of science behind it, but basically what it does is it sanitizes the air continuously as the fan blows. In 10 minutes, it reduces 99% of any COVID that is airborne. It also, there's been case studies in other school systems and universities that it basically takes the bacteria that's in a classroom and reduces it well in half. The schools that are listed, the reason those were chose was these are schools that do not have any outdoor air, so you don't get that air turnover. The other ones are basically older HVAC systems. So that's why we chose those. The electrical is replacing some fire alarms at Cash and Hog Woodward. They're just out of date. We cannot get parts for them anymore. Cook, the kitchen renovation. You know, if we decide what we decide to do with Cook, that could be one project that could be changed or pushed back. So that's kind of iffy, but if we choose, depends on what we choose as to what we do there. The Glen boiler replacement, restroom renovation at Kimberly Park. Then you have your emergency repairs. We have resurfacing the tracks at Parkland, West, and Atkins, and tennis court repairs at Reagan. This next one is what I referred to earlier. That's the 2016 bond. And basically these projects are laid out by year. So we've got the Carver, the control systems at Carver will be replaced. Cash Elementary, replace the roofs. Clemens Elementary, replace the electric boiler pumps. North, exterior lighting. And what is the other one? South Fork, lighting. And West Forsyth, replace the HVAC in the 900 building and renovate the kitchen area.
So one item, Mr. Teague, on here that concerned me a little bit was about the ERV system at Reagan.
Mm-hmm.
When was that system put in when the school was built 11 years ago?
Yes, ma'am, it was.
So I guess my concern is I know we just put 4 of these systems on this summer at Carver, Parkland, Reynolds, and Prep, I believe were the 4 schools that we put the ERV systems in. And what's their typical lifespan?
20 years, 15 to 20 years. This is a piece of equipment that runs 24/7 and never shuts off. The problem that we have with the ones at Reagan, they were purchased and the company's out of business. So parts are very difficult to find. And this one, the repair was going to be on the upward scale of about $85,000 to get it up and going. This unit is very important. It not only conditions the air in the gym, but it also conditions spaces in all of the locker rooms and the gym areas and dressing rooms.
Okay. So we basically don't have any recourse with the other company for it only lasting, you know, just over 10 years if it was supposed to go 15 to 20?
Right. No, we do not.
Okay.
And it's terrible, but you're going to see Reagan pop up again. There's multiple other ERVs on that building.
Okay. All right. And then one of the things that I just want to make sure that we're including, in one of the slides, it talked about the criteria for the projects, and a lot of it was based on the lifespan or based on the age of the system. And I just want to make sure that we're considering the equity piece when we're looking at these projects of where things are needed. I know some of it, you know, if it breaks down, it breaks down. It doesn't matter where it is, but some of the things that seem more discretionary, like new locker rooms or that type of thing, just, you know, doing that due diligence of going back through and making that equity check. I'd like to see that that's happening since it's part of our strategic plan.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. So are there any questions for Mr. Teague on these capital projects?
I have one. This is Board Member Kaplan. So a couple of slides back under 526, you have design fees for $200,000. What is that for? I didn't see anything tagged with that.
So that's to design all of these projects. That's to do the roof designs, the mechanical replacements. That's what all of that money is used for.
Okay. All right. Thanks for clarifying.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. That's all right. So, Mr. Teague, I think you did both D and E, right? The 2021 maintenance and capital projects, as well as the first one.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Then we're going to move on to the disposition of surplus property. Oh, you got
Darryl.
okay.
But Darryl Walker's got his hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to let the board know that the commissioners approved the funds for the 2/3 projects last Thursday. So upon approval from our board, we will then send a letter to the county and begin that briefing process. But they did approve it last week.
Good. That's great news. Okay. Is there anything else, Mr. Walker, that needs to be presented on these about disposition of surplus properties?
Let me go back just really quick too. So I want you to know on the bipolar ionization, there's been a lot of work to that. And one of the things that, we probably had some, just got really lucky is that the new units that we put in at Ashley a few years ago when we had the questions and concerns there actually has the bipolar ionization already on it. So those units are running at the Paisley location. And since they're not on the list, but I wanted to let you know that that system is in place there.
You mean at the Ashley location?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right, great. Okay, our next topic is the extension of the food service management contract addendum for the summer food service program, and that's with Lauren Richards.
Good evening, everyone. Board Member Crawley, members of the board, Dr. Harrison. Back in May of 2020, board members approved the food service management contract addendum for Chartwell's to operate the summer food service program through the summer months. COVID changed things a little bit for the nutrition program, as I know you all are aware and very supportive of, and I appreciate that. And that program was slated to end by the USDA on August 31st, and all schools were slated to return back to the National School Lunch Program and School Breakfast Program. I'm very excited to please that at the very last minute on August 31st, the USDA decided to extend 9 waivers for the operation of the summer food service program during a time where many schools nationwide are operating in a virtual capacity or a hybrid capacity. And those waivers are extended through December 31st of 2020. And the key pieces here to this extension is the summer food service program allows us to feed every single child for free. There are no free or reduced applications needed for that, and no charges that need to be applied. And we can also feed all children, regardless of whether they are enrolled in Winston-Salem, Forsyth County schools. And so that is all children ages 0 through 18. And so this evening, this addendum to that food service management contract is requesting your approval to extend that addendum through December 31st so that we can continue to provide that service to our community. Do you all have any questions for me this evening?
Mr. Walker?
Yes, ma'am.
Looks like your hand is up, but maybe you don't have a question for this.
Yeah, it was for the previous.
Okay, sorry about that.
No question, just this is wonderful news. This is Elizabeth, and I couldn't be happier.
Yes.
It absolutely is. It absolutely is.
It is good news. Thank you. Okay, we have a number of action items. Let's start with the first one. Consider approval of Brunson Elementary bond project location. Is there a motion to recommend to build a new school on the recommendation from the superintendent is to build a new school on the Cook site, combining the populations of Brunson Elementary School and Cook Literacy Model? Is there a motion? And this would be from anybody on Buildings and Grounds, which includes Crowley, Calvert Hayes, Parker, Kaplan, and Jones. Okay, there's no motion. We'll move on to B. Consider approval of North Forsyth High School renovation schematic plans. Do we have a motion to approve that?
Motion approved.
Yeah.
Kaplan.
For Jones.
Okay.
Okay, we have a motion made by Kaplan, a second by Jones. Are there any questions or discussion? All right, Dr. Harrison, if you would do the roll call for buildings and grounds.
Leah Crowley,
Yes.
Lyda Calvert-Hayes,
Yes.
Deanna Kaplan,
Yes.
Dana Jones,
Yes.
Marilyn Park.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Great. The next motion is the consideration for approving the construction manager for North Forsyth High School renovation. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve, Kaplan.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second, Hayes Calvert.
Thank you. Are there any questions or discussion? Dr. Harrison, if you would do the roll call.
Board Member Crowley,
Yes.
Lyda Calvert-Hayes,
Yes.
Deanna Kaplan,
Yes.
Dana Jones,
Yes.
Marilyn Parker.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passed.
Thank you. The next one is to consider approval of the 2020-2022 two-thirds bond capital spending plan.
Okay.
Capital project spending plan.
Move approval, Board Member Jones.
Thank you.
Second, Parker.
Thank you. Are there any questions or discussion? All right, we could do the vote.
Sure. Board Member Crowley,
Yes.
Lyda Calvert-Hayes,
Yes.
Deanna Kaplan,
Yes.
Dana Jones,
Yes.
Marilyn Parker.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Okay, great. The next one is to consider approval of the 2021 maintenance and capital projects funded by the 2016 bond package.
Move approval,
Move
Board Member
approval,
Jones.
Okay, we have Jones with the motion, and the second was,
I believe it was Ms. Parker.
okay, Ms. Parker, thank you. Are there any questions or discussion? Great. If Dr. Harrison?
Board Member Crowley,
Yes.
Lyda Calvert-Hayes,
Yes.
Deanna Kaplan,
Yes.
Dana Jones,
Yes.
Marilyn Parker.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, the next item is to consider approval of disposition of 13 mobile classroom trailers.
Move approval.
Go ahead, Dana.
Okay, Jones with the motion and Kaplan with the second, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, is there any discussion or questions? Great, we'll take the vote.
Board Member Crowley,
Yes.
Lyda Calvert-Hayes,
Yes.
Board Member Kaplan,
Yes.
Dana Jones,
Yes.
Marilyn Parker.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, item G is consider approval of disposition of surplus property, a 1999 Toro 580D mower. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve, Kaplan.
Thank you.
Second, Jones.
Thank you. Is there any discussion or questions? I hope not on a 1999 mower, but we'll.
It will be hard to see it go, but we'll deal.
Okay, I don't have any video footage of it. Okay, Dr. Harrison, if you would take the vote, please.
Board Member Crowley,
Yes.
Lyda Calvert-Hayes,
Yes.
Deanna Kaplan,
Yes.
Board Member Jones,
Yes.
and Marilyn Parker.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. And the last one is to consider approval of the extension of the food service management contract summer meal program addendum.
Motion to approve, Kaplan.
Thank you.
Second, Calvert Hayes.
Thank you. Is there any discussion or any questions? All right, we'll take the vote.
Board Member Crowley,
Yes.
Lyda Calvert-Hayes,
Yes.
Board Member Kaplan,
Yes.
Board Member Jones,
Yes.
Board Member Parker.
Yes.
And if I might ask a question, Dion, could you go back over, are you keeping record?
Yes, ma'am.
Could you go back over the number we voted on? For some reason I might have missed something here.
I was actually going to ask once we got to the end of the action items for clarification, because there was no motion made for action item A for Brunson. And so I was going to ask, is there a motion, is this matter going to be tabled? And if so, if someone could make a motion to table it, or is there some additional information that's needed?
Or if there's a substitute motion?
This is Board Member Parker. I would like to move that we table this. I'd really like to review those survey results and just get a little more clarification on where we kind of stand with the community and whatnot. So I would move to table.
Okay.
Is there a second?
Yeah, this is Board Member Jones. I'll second.
Okay.
Okay.
Is there any discussion or any questions about tabling that motion on Brunson? Okay, we'll take a vote.
Board Member Crowley?
Yes.
Board Member Lyda Calvert-Hayes?
Yes.
Deanna Kaplan?
Yes.
Dana Jones?
Yes.
Marilyn Parker?
Yes.
All right, motion to table passes. Thank you.
Okay, this concludes the Buildings and Grounds portion of the work session, and I'm going to hand off to the Finance Committee with Board Member Jones.
Thank you, Leah. And we have 2 items up for discussion this evening and 1 for action. Both discussion items will be covered by our Chief Financial Officer, Andrea Gillis. The first is the 2021 budget update. So Andrea, if you would like to lead us.
Good evening, Finance Committee members, other board members, and Dr. Harrison. I'm going to be providing us with a brief budget update. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, we can.
So we've had a successful year-end close of our fiscal year 2021 school year. The 1920 audit is scheduled to be completed by November 1st of 2020. There will be an increase in fund balance. However, we would not know the final amount until the audit is complete. As you know, we are operating under a continuation budget. We've loaded 75% or less of prior year budgets at this time. We will bring a final 2021 budget to the board next month for approval. Once the budget is adopted, we will begin bringing forward monthly amendments and transfers, as well as monthly financial statements and budget versus actual reporting. As far as the state budget is concerned, the legislature did not approve a budget as of yet. As you know, in fiscal year 1920, they passed several micro budgets, but did not pass an overall state budget. The belief is that this will be the case this fiscal year as well. They approved several budget items so far, but not an overall budget. DPI has allocated our funds using last year's formulas, using our projected enrollment. As of the 10th day of school, our ADM was 800 students below projection. Typically, the state will adjust our funding after the second month. Based on prior year trends, enrollment should increase by the second month. But just last week, we received good news that the state passed HB 1105, which included a provision that prevents budget cuts due to declining enrollment. Now, as far as the local budget is concerned, the county appropriation was $19.8 million less than requested. We made several budget adjustments by eliminating some of the requests, such as the funds for compensation study market adjustments of 2.4, safety and security of 1.6 million, and textbooks and instructional materials of 12 million. Other reductions include reducing the number of new the new instructional technologist position by 1.8 million, or 28 positions. The allotment was reduced to 0.5 positions for every elementary and middle school, as opposed to the 1 position that was allotted. We also reduced central office positions by 1.2 million, and there was a reduction of other non-salary expenses of $800,000. This concludes the budget update. Are there any questions?
I believe Ms. Kaplan had her hand up.
Yes, I have a couple of questions. First of all, going back to your first slide about the audit being completed, which is great, but just for housekeeping purposes, I think we were supposed to receive some corrective action report on the 18-19 audit that was due on June 30th. Wondering if we could receive that, and what were all the findings and what are the corrections? And secondly, I know we were talking about budget month to month and fund balance, and probably we'll get a better handle on that after the 20 audit is completed, 19-20 audit is completed. But can we get some sort of an idea of what our fund balance is and where we are right now?
Well, back to your first question, the corrective action, that was included in the audit. My responses for the corrective actions were included in the audit, and we have implemented those corrective actions for this fiscal year. So those corrective actions were included in the audit report that was presented by the auditors.
So the report that you received, the hard copy, has the corrections in there, Ms. Kaplan?
It does. Okay. All right. Thank you.
And as far as the fund balance goes, I don't really want to say right now, because until the audit happens, we don't know what adjustments the auditors will make for prior years. So, I mean, it will be an increase. I just don't know exactly what the increase will be right now. I just don't want to say, because if it doesn't come in at that amount, then, I don't want us to be disappointed. But it is going to be an increase in the fund balance. Not much. I mean, it's not going to get us back to where we were before last year, but we're working on it.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
And so once again, I think I mentioned this during the last board meeting, but looking at the savings that we had when we shut down, can you tell us a little bit more about what those savings were and how we can use those savings to project what we're doing for next, for this this quarter?
Well, the savings that we had will be what will be reflected in the fund balance, because we try to spend all of our state funds, and so any savings that we had would have been local savings, and it would have been transportation costs would have been a savings because we weren't running buses, we weren't paying that many subs, so that would have been a savings as well. So those are the kinds of things that we saved money on last year. But it would all be local savings, and that savings would go to a fund balance.
Okay, it's just good to know this as board members, since we are held accountable, for the budget, just to really know where we are when we're making decisions about how we're spending our money.
I just have a follow-up. I think Ms. Kaplan brought up some really good points. I think in our next item tonight, we are spending money from savings, which is kind of hard to think that we're going to spend. I think some of the money that's going to be allocated or proposed in the salary schedule, the 3% for classified employees, some of that money, if I'm not mistaken, is supposedly to be paid for from the savings. So if we haven't been given exactly what those savings are, and when we say savings, basically that year closes out, last year closes out, that money goes into fund balance, and then this year we're going to be taking some of those funds out of the fund balance to pay for this 3% bonus. Is that correct, basically? No,
ma'am. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, the fund balance is from last year. The savings is going to be the current year savings.
Okay, so this is current year from since we are not in school this year. Okay, we're going to take that. We're taking that savings.
Yes.
And we're paying the 3%. That's going to be part of what we're paying, the 3%.
Yes.
Okay, and so before we were out of the buildings and closed down for COVID in March, what was our fund balance at that point after the last audit?
I would have to pull that to give you the exact number, but it was around $3 million, I think.
Okay. And if you were just guessing and not wanting to disappoint, but to give a kind of a low ball number, what would you think that might be added to that?
Roughly, I mean, one of the things that happened last year was that the capital fund balance was a negative 1.4 million. So that would now be even. We did save the money on the capital side to break even with our fund balance for ending fiscal year 2020. So that amount should be even. And for our local fund balance, anywhere from 1 to 2 million.
Okay. I understand. I know I don't want to put you on the spot. I know, it could come in at a different amount, but just to get an idea of what we were looking at. Okay. Other questions, committee members or board members on the proposed budget update?
I do have a question. This is Calvert Hayes. As far as what we should maintain in our fund balance, and I remember that we did discuss that not too long ago, and it was a much larger amount than we have in our fund balance. Do you remember that exact amount that we felt like we should maintain in our fund balance?
Is this question for me? I wasn't here when the fund balance was higher.
Yes, and our superintendent may have that answer, because we did discuss that. I just didn't write that down, and I don't have that number right in front of me right now.
What we talked about was the fact that you should have access to 1 month of spending, of expenditures. So that could run, it depends on how much, because we are under an LEA. We would like to see our fund balance get up to 10 million, but your expenditures per month is about 30 million. So you want to have access to that. And so that's where we are.
Okay, that
trying to get up to, you want to have a comfort zone, but you want to also have access. And I feel comfortable that our county has good access, but we know we need to do our due diligence and get up to, a good fund balance, which would be about $10 million.
And we are right now just contemplating around 3. Is that correct?
No, ma'am. We are looking pretty good. And I think why Ms. Andre is a little hesitant is because sometimes you find surprises from auditors and you have to pay back money. But you already saw that we had, was a part of our fund balance, but we had a $4 million carryover in Title I, and that was redistributed to the schools. So I think we look pretty good. Of course, we're not at $10 million, but we certainly look much better than we feel much better now than we did before.
Okay, I appreciate you answering that, because that is a concern that I have. Thank you.
I think Ms. Crawley, Leah, did you have your hand up?
Yes, I just wanted to clarify that having that 1 month's expenses, money for 1 month's expenses in a fund balance is if you're not dependent, if you are an individual, if you're not dependent on the county for your funding.
Correct.
So in our situation where we are dependent on the county for our funding, you're not recommending that we have 30 million in our fund balance, correct?
No, I think I said 10. Okay. I think that's what I started the conversation with.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so board members, do we have any other questions on the budget update? If not, then we'll move into the salary presentation. All right, thank you.
Okay, now I will share the other presentation. Can you see the other presentation now?
Yes.
Yes.
So tonight, Devlin Bonner Reed and I will review the proposed changes to policy 4141 and present salary recommendations for 2021. So teachers and certified support personnel for state salaries per State Bill 818. So State Bill 818 gave teachers received a one-step increase for the fiscal year 2021 school year. A teacher must have worked at least 120 days in 1920 school year in order to receive this step increase. If the teacher does not meet the criteria, they will remain at the 1920 state rate. Locally paid teachers and certified support personnel receive the same step increase, and that was included in our budget request. This increase was effective July 1 and has been paid in July and August paychecks. Certified support personnel include instructional coordinators, social workers, instructional coaches, EC audiologists, EC and speech and language pathologists, educational diagnosticians, instructional facilitators, media coordinators, school counselors, school nurses, and school psychologists. All teachers and certified instructional support personnel will receive a lump sum bonus of $350 by October 31st of 2020. This is per the state Bill 818. Teachers must be employed in the above roles as of October 1st, 2020 in order to receive the bonus, and the bonus is not considered compensation for retirement purposes. Now, as far as the local supplement is concerned, teacher and certified support personnel schedules will increase for the projected $11 million in revenue pursuant to the 1/4% or 25% and a quarter penny county sales tax increase, which is Article 46. The proposed changes to the policy 4141 are as follows. Teachers and certified support personnel salary schedules will be comprised of 3 components. They will get their state rate that the state provides. They will also get the local supplement that was provided prior to last fiscal year. And then they will get the local Article 46 supplement that will be provided from the $11 million in sales tax revenue. The local Article 46 supplement is based on the sales tax increase and could fluctuate from year to year based on the amount of sales tax collected. Therefore, the local Article 46 supplement will be adjusted up or down and allocated to reflect the total revenue collected. Right now, we are recommending an across-the-board increase to ensure all applicable employees receive a $2,000 increase. This $2,000 increase includes the $715 increase given by the local government in 1920. In future years, if sales revenue increases, the additional revenue can be used to provide a graduated schedule to address local supplements in priority order for beginning, mid-range, and veteran level certified staff. In addition, we are also recommending moving to a single local supplement table as affected by the current one for those hired prior to 2010. Right now, we have 2 schedules. We want to move to the 1 schedule for ease and to be fair to all teachers, no matter when they were hired. Next, we'll talk about classified. So the salary increase of 3% for classified staff was not funded by the county. Therefore, we're recommending giving a one-time lump sum bonus of 3% to be paid by November 30th of 2020 with the cost of approximately $3 million. This bonus will be funded by one-time savings due to school closure from the current year. This bonus is not considered compensation in reference to retirement. And as recommended by the compensation study, we're still going to have an ongoing review of classified salary schedules and will be a part of the future year's budget processes, as well as the salary schedules will be adjusting pending LEA funding. Next, we'll have Ms. Bonner Reed to talk about principal pay.
Good evening, board members, Chair Woodbury, and Dr. Hairston. So I'm going to talk about principal, AP, and central office administrator pay. So for principal salaries per Senate Bill 818 and House Bill 1105, and also per our own policy, there'll be no changes to policy 4141. The NC General Assembly did not change the principal schedules for 2020-21 school year. Principals will not have a change in pay in July. And principals who received a principal bonus in October 2019 will receive the same bonus as they did in 2019. And then finally, in January, the principal pay will not change for ADM due to the hold harmless legislation that basically came out last week, unless a principal changed schools since last year. Principal pay for ADM will be based on the 2019-20 enrollment. And again, I want to remind everybody of the criteria. You must be employed as a principal in public schools as of October 1st, 2020 in order to qualify. For assistant principals, we do have a little bit of a change here. So per Senate Bill 818 and per our policy, there's no change to the policy 4141. But we have received, or the APs will receive, a one-step increase for the 2020-21 school year. And then their local supplement schedules will increase based on changes to the teacher local supplement schedules. And finally, as recommended by the compensation study that we did earlier in the year, school admin pay schedules will be reviewed during the 2021-22 budget process so we can see what changes are recommended and also see where we stand budget-wise. The criteria for these changes in bullets 1 through 3, they must work at least 120 days in 2019-20 school year, and if employee does not meet this criteria, they will remain at the 19-20 state rate. So before I go on to the next slide, I'm actually going to try to take over and share with you some other information that will provide some context as to why we're recommending some changes in the salary structure for central administrative pay. So I am going to share this and we'll come back to the presentation. Hold on. Of course, it's not coming up.
The other one will have to come down.
Okay.
Yeah, you can drop yours.
Okay. Let's try this again. Is it coming up?
Not yet.
Yet. For some reason.
Devlin, I'll pull it up, Devlin.
Thank you, I appreciate that. For some reason, it's not coming up for me.
Thank you, Andrea.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Okay. Can we get it bigger or the whole screen? Okay. So what I want to share with you is the compensation comparison of our CPO level and above positions versus our principals. And the reason I want to share this information is because we find the principal experience to be really valuable, but after recruiting and trying to convince people to come into different great opportunities for them, it's been really challenging. So we just want to provide you with a few thoughts around that. First is that 4 principals have a higher salary than even our deputy superintendent. 10 principals have a higher salary than the assistant superintendents, and 17 principals have a higher salary than the highest paid area superintendents. And over 70 principals have a higher salary than our minimum pay for our CPO 1. This, of course, does not include any eligible principal bonuses. Again, the thought behind this is we find principal experience to be really valuable for a lot of different roles, and it's hard to attract them to these different roles. Examples of difficulty in hiring. We just wanted to provide a quick example. We have an employee that's coming from a different district, and they're making nearly $128,000 as an executive director at that district. And we want to bring them into a cabinet level position. At our current rate, where we have a minimum of 120, and this person this is an external person with 30 years of experience. So per our policy, we would give them credit for 15 years, and their salary would be around $130,000. If we had given credit for all of their experience, it would be $141,600. And when we did our comparison versus other salaries and other districts, such as Guilford, Union, and CMS, we looked at additional districts too. They just didn't have the comparable roles, so we couldn't do apples to apples. For this particular example that we use, the role is 150, 150, and over 200 when we compared it with 2019-20 salaries when we first started this journey. So what we found in general is that our salary comparison for other districts, particularly for CPO and above, and you could take that further down as well, that we were the lowest district in terms of salary. So I just wanted to provide that context before I go into this last slide and provide more information. So Andrea's going to pull up the last slide.
This is Jones. While she's pulling up the slide, can I ask you where? I'm following what you're saying there, and I also know that I don't. And you didn't do this. I know that and we all know central office staff work hard. Our principals work about 24/7. But where are those additional dollars when you add up and you look at those bonus? those increases, and it looks like it retros back to July 1, if I'm not mistaken. How are we paying for that? Where does that come from?
Well, it hasn't been determined that it will retro back to July 1. That was just normally what the policy states. But we would use some savings that we have in the budget. For instance, we budgeted based on what we paid last year for our AS400 system. We had about $470,000 budgeted for that. But because we did a 3-year deal with them, we were able to save about $160,000 in savings on our AS400 system because we signed a 3-year deal, hoping the 3-year deal would move us into our new ERP system. In addition, we also have a lease at Kernersville bus lot that we won't be renewing this year. That's another $60,000 in savings. And then we had savings in our average salaries due to the fact that we had a lot of retirees this year that were budgeted at a higher average salary, that we were able to lower some of the average salaries.
Okay. And this is Board Member Kaplan, to piggyback on what Dana said. So how much, what is the total? What are we talking about?
Approximately $340,000.
That's it if we retro back to July 1st.
Right.
So if we make any adjustments, it would be adjusted then. And I can keep going, also ask additional questions.
I think Board Member Motzinger has a question.
Well,
yeah.
Please finish your finish your presentation and then I'll ask my questions. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So it's really more of kind of summarizing everything that we're recommending in this policy change based on the salary analysis that we did. I showed it like kind of an example snapshot. And really the driving force is so that we can be competitive and attract the best possible candidates for open positions and also retain our talent. So all the individuals that are hired in these positions will begin at the listed rate and will be eligible for any annual increases as we decide. Again, it's to attract and retain internal candidates and also desirable expertise, such as principal expertise. I already went over the fact that many principals currently earn more than our CPOs, and we're hiring at the level for expertise in the job, and experience credit will not be used to determine the compensation. It's more what they can bring to the job is what we're focusing on and suggesting in this new change to our policy.
And actually,
the next step would be to work on the compensation for all our exempt positions, our operational support specialists and above. So taking this down lower and our classified non-exempt positions.
and so primarily she went over that because the folks, the supervisors are actually evaluating individuals at a higher pay rate, and also is trying to recruit internally. We need to get to the point where we can convince our principals to apply for some of the central office jobs. So to summarize, we're looking at a $2,000 supplement from the quarter penny sales tax for teachers across the board. That would take care of teachers, a 3% stipend for a bonus for our classified, with a commitment. We really need to work on salary schedules and come back with a permanent recommendation based on where they are on the salary schedule. The principals are hold harmless. The bonuses they received last year are in queue to be to get them again. And of course, the central office pay, the assistant principals receiving their increases that are aligned with teacher increases as well. So that's to summarize the entire list of changes. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we had some hands up. Elizabeth, if you'll ask your questions, and I think Ms. Kaplan's next.
Okay. What percentage raise is being proposed for our highest paid employees? Because I'm seeing, my understanding is compared to last year, our average teacher will see a $1,285 increase this year. But I'm seeing our highest paid employees are getting substantially more being recommended. What percentage raise to their salary is this?
We can calculate that and send that to you. Actually, teachers will get $350. They'll get the $350 from the state as well. So it's a little more than the $2,000. So we'll calculate that and get that to you for sure. If Andrea can calculate that.
It looks like maybe some of those averages, I mean, I just pulled up a few off the draft. It looks like some of those higher paid were almost 20, maybe 20, 22%. And am I accurate with that for a central office?
Well, the prior year, policy 4141, that's the starting pay, and they would have gotten years of experience pay, so it's not going to be as high. But we're wanting to move to the proposed plan of just giving them the base of the new amount and not giving them years of experience credit. So it'll be different for, like, their current pay is based on, has years of experience added to the base number. So the new proposed plan, they would not get years of experience paid. That base would just be the amount.
So yeah, you can go on, Ms. Jones.
So I just had a couple of things. So the classified employees at this point, we're looking at a 3% increase for classified employees. And then have we given ourselves a timeline of when? And I know we've talked about maybe folks aren't classified in the right category, and we need to do some studying and some looking at that. But do we have kind of an end date as to when we may have something there that we could, so that our classified employees that are on the call tonight would have an idea of when maybe they would see more of an increase?
For the 3%, you can go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I think we were just having connection issues. So do you know when we might have, or is that salary schedule gonna go out in phases?
Well, we had actually recommended the end of November, so they would have that for Christmas, but that seemed to be a source of conversation the last time, so we didn't want to come back and see. But right now was the end of December was what we would like to propose, but we're open to whatever you all think.
Well, I think I'm probably the one that brought up a little bit of that, and I just know that some of the folks that we have on unemployment right now are classified employees. We said when we went to phase C, we would not, we would employ everyone, but I think that didn't happen, whether they chose to go on unemployment or whatever, and so that's probably classified. That's bus drivers, probably maybe some child nutrition. I'm not sure, but I would want to make sure that not knowing when we're planning on coming back into the building, I would want to make sure that all of our classified employees were able to receive that 3% if they were coming back. I think that was my only concern about the time.
We recommended the end of November.
So,
Ms. Monson?
yeah, I still had several other concerns. So the percentage raises are certainly out of line with anything else we're talking about for our staff. My question is really, so are we having trouble hiring staff due to scarcity limitations? Because my understanding is, for example, things like speech and language pathologists, we end up having to hire contract employees for certain positions because we don't pay those people enough. And I'm seeing that these positions are being filled by folks who I think are excellent. I also am concerned that there are really big raises being proposed for the highest paid employees in our district. And the language I have heard for years is about talent. And yet in reality, I have not in all my years seen that there is some talent, this elusive talent, that somehow requires much bigger raises than the folks who do so much of the work of the district.
Well, actually, Ms. Monsinger, here's what I will say to you. The central office staff, the salaries, not only this level, but a lot of other levels have fallen so far behind. That's why you've had a series of CFOs come through. I'm not going to say that's the only reason, but a lot of times when you're trying to recruit people to write curriculum, like our Chief Academic Officer, it is very hard because they realize that they're earning what a lot of coordinators and directors make in other districts. So what's happened, because we didn't want to fight this battle, we have allowed these salaries to get way out of range. So you got a principal making $159,000 a year, and you got its supervisor earning $115,000 a year. So what happens when you're trying to catch up, it looks incredibly out of order. But we've allowed it to get out of order because we didn't want to have these tough conversations. And so what happens oftentimes is that it gets so far behind because every time you're trying to catch up, we don't want to have the tough conversation or make the tough decision. And then it gets further behind next year and further behind next year. And so when we started to look at the fact that we couldn't recruit our principals to apply for these jobs, we were thinking, my goodness, what is going on here? And we started to look at the principal's salary, and thought, who in the world would want to take a $30,000 pay cut to come and supervise other principals? And so the reality is that that's where we are. Our teachers are going to fare very well with their quarter penny sales tax.
They're not.
Yeah, well, $2,200 as a supplement, local supplement with they get the $350 from the state, $2,000 from us, $2,300. I wish we could give them $5, but I can tell you that's quite a bit. So at some point, we have to make tough decisions at different levels and start where they need to be. Our classified, the challenge is you all have asked that they get a minimum hourly rate, but when we look back at the pay schedule, we found so many of them have different pay schedules. So we want to bring you a new pay schedule this year with an increase in our classified employee salary, but in the meantime, we don't want to forget them, so the supplement will suffice there. Now, the speech pathologists are paid on a teacher pay schedule. If they are getting the teacher pay schedule, they'll get the same raises. And as I mentioned in our other meeting, we have a lot of people who are paid on the teacher pay schedule, the social workers, our school counselors, even our assistant principals will receive the benefit from the quarter penny sales tax. So while you might think that looks out of the reason we showed you the sample was because reducing the experience by half for people who come from the outside takes them so low. And I want to tell you, a lot of them only agreed to come because I pretty much asked them to come and take these positions. It wasn't because they thought they were going to come here and I had to really talk them into coming. And I wish I could talk our principals into taking the positions, but the pay is not structured as such.
Yeah, I think, Elizabeth, do you have other questions?
Let me let other board members ask, and then I will come back if they're not.
Okay, so next will be Ms. Parker, and then followed by Board Member Burke.
Thank you. I would agree that I think that we're out of line in lots of places. I think teachers are out of line. I think classified's out of line. And I am really, really hesitant to do it piecemeal. I think if we're going to do a whole restructuring, that we just take the bull by the horns when we know how much savings we're going to have, when we know how much money we're looking at, and then we look at something that would be equitable across all lines. I'm a little simple-minded from time to time, and I think that it's a lot easier to see the big picture with everybody when we look at percentages from the very top all the way down to our lower paid employees. So I just think if we're going to restructure everything, and that sounds like that's the plan, that we just restructure everything. And we look at big picture, we look at how much savings we have, and we go from there. I just really, that's my feeling. I hate to do things piecemeal, because I think in the end, if we don't have the savings and we don't have the money, somebody's going to get shortchanged, and I don't think that's fair.
Thank you, Ms. Parker. Ms. Burke, and then I think maybe Ms. Kaplan has her hand up. So, Board Member Burke.
Thank you, Board Member Jones. I do want to say I agree with what Ms. Parker said. I think that if we're going to restructure, I disagree as far as being not wanting to have those tough conversations. I think we're going to have some tough conversations, and we need to do that so that we can make sure that when we restructure, everything is done in the most equitable, transparent way. And I do realize that we have hired a lot of new employees, and that they could have taken positions in other places where they would have been making more money. But They, and I appreciate all of them, but at the same time, when individuals apply for jobs and they are made aware of the salaries and they agree, then that's what they have agreed to. I want to be fair, and I want to make sure that everything's done in the most equitable way. And I think that we need to take a look at salaries, and we just need to start right there. I'm going to stop. But I agree with Ms. Parker. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Burke. Ms. Parker, did you have some other comments?
Yes, well, I think that Board Member Parkland and Board Member Burt just echoed everything that I wanted to say. Definitely we need to be fair, and I think we need to look at the entire restructuring. And if we're looking at what we are proposing right now with one-time funds, I don't know that that's something that we can even do. I mean, bus slot savings going towards salaries, that's not a continuation type fund. So
yes, ma'am. These are continuation savings. These are not one-time savings.
Okay. Well, back to what Marilyn and Barbara said, I do agree in that regard that we just need to look at the entire picture and we need to structure everything.
Thank you, Board Member Kaplan. Lyda Calvert-Hayes, do you have a question or comment?
Yes, I do. I think the first thing we need to do is get our budget and all straightened out where we know where we are, where we stand. I've been asking for 2 years about that fund balance, and I've yet to get an exact answer as to where we are. And I think we need to get our budget in hand where we know where we are, where we know what we have extra. And I have to agree 100% with Ms. Parker and what she said, and also with what our other board members seem to be thinking also. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Calvert-Hayes. Ms. Monsinger, did you have additional comments? I know you wanted to allow other board members to comment.
Yes, my additional comment is that we have, in the time I've been on the board, had multiple conversations about the highest paid employees. And just like has happened all across America, those needs tend to continue to be forefront. And it troubles me deeply that folks who are struggling to meet their basic needs are told to wait, while those who have the resources to really meet their needs are put as a priority. And that just troubles me to the core. So I don't feel like we have come up with something that really addresses our district as a whole. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Burke.
Last comment. I totally agree with Board Member Monsinger. We have to, we spend a lot of time talking about how much we value our employees, our teacher assistants, our teachers, everybody, bus drivers. We have an opportunity to show them. And that is what I think that this board should do at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Burke. Do we have any other additional comments on the compensation recommendations at this point? Okay, so that concludes our discussion items for this evening for finance. We do have one item up for consideration, and that is the consideration of the 2021 compensation recommendations. And it looks like this is one big recommendation. So do I have a motion to approve?
Yes,
Substitute motion?
Yes, this is Elizabeth, and my motion is that we table the discussion.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Monsinger. Do I have a second to the motion to table?
Second, Calvert-Hayes.
Okay, I think I had multiple seconds.
So
okay.
Do we want to break the teachers out so we can get the teacher one done?
Well, I think, Andrea, I think we were just voting on the way it was recommended. I think that,
I think we'll bring it back. We'll table it and bring it back. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, Dr. Harrison, if you will call the roll, please.
Board Member Jones,
Yes.
Andrea Bramer. She texted us, Deanna Kaplan,
Yes.
Elizabeth Motsinger,
Yes.
and Marilyn Parker.
Yes.
Thank you much.
Thank you. That concludes our Finance Committee, and I will take it back to our, to Chair Woodbury.
Board Member Jones, I'm trying to get myself situated here to know where, okay, so the next item is new business, and it doesn't look like we have any new business. We do have a few announcements, and I think that Mr. Mills, Dr. Harrison will discuss the announcements, so will you do that?
Dr. Mills, are you still on?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, board members. So just a few brief announcements. First, we just wanted to share with you all that the State Board of Education last week asked lawmakers to hold the per pupil funding at current levels based on average daily membership. That would be a big plus for us. Also, we are working in conjunction with the organization doing the census to hold a census event at North Forsyth High School 4 to 6 on Thursday, September 17th. There's more information about the details when you click on the announcement, but we just wanted to put that out there to look for that event at North Forsyth as we try to be a good partner for our community. Next, giving you all updates on where we're at for our COVID-19 reopening committees. We do have 2 subcommittee meetings coming up. One is Thursday the 17th, and then the next one will be October 1st as we get ready to make a recommendation before you all take action for a vote on reopening with in-person instruction. And then finally, Colin Moore brought this to our attention that there is a minority contractors lunch and learn event on September 17th from 11 to 1. The location is downtown on South Martin Luther King, and the flyer with additional information is also in this link. And we just hope, we hope that y'all can be there to support that and to get the news out for our families and students. And that's it.
Thanks. Our next item is we need to go into a closed session to review personnel matter. Is there a motion to go into closed?
So move, Board Member Crowley.
Second, Board Member Jones.
If there are no further questions or discussion, Dr. Harrison, could you get a consensus to go into closed? Dr. Harrison, you're muted.
Oh, okay. All in favor of going into close, let it be known by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And we will exit out of closed and close the meeting from the link that's posted.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on Your School Channel, Cable 2.